well, not mute, but you have the headphones in, so it doesn't matter. Because you got to be able to hear them.
Right. So I got to unmute that right there.
Yeah, unmute it, but your headphones are in, so you're going to hear everything through your headphones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't have to mute it. Let me send this thing. So, here's some notes.
Okay. Welcome to Let It Be Known. We are live. Tonight is no ordinary night. This is election 2024. The day has dawned. A pivotal moment for our nation as voters make their voices heard from coast to coast. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., the heart of the action, with scenes from iconic locations, including Howard University, where history may once again be in the making, with Vice President Kamala Harris on campus, connecting with her roots and the next generation of leaders. Our coverage tonight is packed with dynamic special guests, powerful insights, and exclusive updates from critical battlegrounds. We're taking you from the polls to the pulse of our communities, following the path of democracy and the tireless work to defend and uplift it. This election will shape our future on issues of justice, equity, economy, security, climate action, and so much more. So whether you're joining us from home or following us on social media, stay with us as we bring you live updates, experts, and the voices of voters who are ready to make a difference. This is Let It Be Known, your platform, your stories, and tonight, your election coverage. And joining us now, Mandela Barnes, the former Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor. Mr. Mandela Barnes, welcome to Let It Be Known.
Hey, thank you so much. How's it going today?
It's going. It's good for you. Good of you to join us, I should say.
for sure. I'm really excited to be here. You caught me at a moment where like the office is not as bustling as it was a couple hours ago. But I'm here in the Power to the Polls, Wisconsin office, where we are scaling up the largest operation of its kind. Committed to engage in Black voters, and not just election day, and not just the final stage of the election, but we're doing year-round organizing, right? Because people are real tired of being taken advantage of, feeling like folks only show up every 2 or 4 years. So we're working to maintain a steady, ongoing presence in communities to build that trust.
Yeah, and you said that a Harris victory could spark a new era of hope. What do you see as the core priority she should tackle immediately to unite a divided country and restore public trust in government?
Yeah, well, let me start out by saying the reason why I said that. And I remember 16 years ago, actually 17 years ago, if we take it back to 2007, or we can go even back further, 20 years ago, when Barack Obama gave his DNC speech in 2004. But more specifically, his ascendant candidacy to the office of President of the United States of America certainly instilled something in me. I was a mass comms major, broadcast journalism, and I had every intention of going into the field that you are presently in professionally. And I said, well, this seems very interesting, right? Like this is something I had not had a chance to witness before, had not had a chance to experience. And it wasn't just that he was a black candidate, he was just better than everybody else, and I wanted to be a part of it in some sort of way. And that's when I got into organizing, electoral organizing. And after college in 2008, I went and I was a field organizer, and I was inspired. And if it were not for Barack Obama's candidacy or his presidency, I may have never even sought public office. So I'm really looking at this moment as one that is totally analogous to the situation we were in 16 years ago. One, there are so many people who have become inspired by Kamala Harris' presidency. But also, I think that the issues facing this country, she is certainly ready for. And there could not be a better juxtaposition when it comes to candidates who are running for the office of president right now between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We've experienced 4 years under him. We've had 4 years where she has served as vice president. And the administration has made significant gains, especially as it relates to Black youth. There's still so much more work to be done. Unfortunately, the alternative to Kamala Harris will undo all the progress that we have made and put us in a much more precarious position. And so I'm counting on Kamala Harris, and especially with her opportunity agenda that she has been pushing to put more money in the pockets of Black folks, to provide more opportunities for home ownership, for starting a small business, to expand healthcare, you name it. This is where we are in the country. The things that people have been looking for, people have been crying out for, the things people have been frustrated and upset by. Kamala Harris has taken the time to listen and is ready to deliver on those.
Yeah, and you're obviously in one of those key battleground states. We know Wisconsin is so important. What are you seeing so far?
Yeah, so we have seen incredible voter participation so far. We've had historic early vote totals across the state, and the in-person election day numbers are high. Like I tell people to vote early if you can, because it just makes things that much easier. You never know the circumstances, situations, and it also gives you an opportunity to take a moment to get other people to the polls and encourage other folks to vote. But I'm one of those election day people, just because I have just strong relationships with my with the poll workers, and I need to just go talk to them, during elections, because they've had it rough. Right. Especially with a person like Donald Trump, who has, threatened the lives of poll workers, and people like Rudy Giuliani, who's now having to give up his home because of his threats to election workers. And our poll workers need a little bit of, a little bit of encouragement to keep up the job that is essentially a volunteer position. And so I go there just to, just shoot the breeze with them and make sure they're doing okay. I was number 339 around noon at a polling location where I'm not usually that highest. I don't, usually at the end of the day, I'm not certain if that polling location gets to that number. So I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing. We have Power of the Polls has about 500 plus people out there right now as a part of a canvas that they'll be out there for the next almost 6 hours, wrangling the last few voters. As they say, most of the work up to this point is done, but a swing state like Wisconsin, where we're decided by just a couple handful of votes per ward, every vote matters and every second matters.
Well, one of our viewers, the Orange G, he notes history today. November 5th, 1968, Shirley Chisholm became the first Black woman elected to Congress. And here we are, November 5th, 2024, on the verge of history here. I mean, you can't help but see the connection, right?
Yeah, for sure. And these things don't happen on, by chance. I do, I'm not the most superstitious person, but I do believe in the way that the universe works sometimes.
Yeah, and we've seen heightened security, Mandela Barnes, here in Washington and other cities, with storefronts boarded up and even protective measures around the White House, unprecedented protective measures around the White House. How does it feel as a leader to witness this level of tension on election day, and what does it say about the current state of our democracy?
It should never have gotten to this point, but we have a selfish, sore loser former president who has escalated things to this point. He's a person who blames all of his problems on everyone but himself. He's refused to look inward. And if, the people don't choose him, then all of a sudden it is some rigging of the system. And this is the amount of privilege that we're dealing with. This is a person as petulant as Donald Trump to be in the office of the White House. You can think about the sort of revenge that he'll enact, not just on his political opponents, but on cities like Milwaukee, Chicago, Atlanta, Charlotte, all the cities, Detroit, the cities that are going to determine the outcome of this election, the people in those cities. So I don't want to be fearful here. I want to be completely hopeful and optimistic, and really relish in the moment that the folks in those cities that he has bastardized step up to prevent him from ever assuming the office of president again. Now, fortunately, we don't have all those security measures here in Wisconsin where our public buildings are boarded up. But I did just go out to grab lunch, and I ran into someone from the district attorney's office who was accompanied by a police officer, and they are going around the polling locations just to make sure things are safe and secure, or not even secure, just safe, because our election systems are secure. But safety has been called into question because of Donald Trump and his acolytes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as the former lieutenant governor, what lessons do you think that the Democratic Party should learn from what's been going on here, the divisive politics, the razor-thin margins of victories that you've already experienced, and what many are predicting tonight?
I think it's important to be a party that takes in criticism, a party that takes in feedback. A lot of the things that people have talked about that has kept them undecided. I think that we need to have a real conversation as a party. And it is more difficult for us as a party to have that conversation because this is absolutely a big tent. Republicans, they operate off just a handful of things. And, their restrictive stances on a woman's right to choose, their stances on, other conservative or the other conservative playlists, right? Like, that is who they are. It is real cut and dry. But we represent so many more interests. We represent the whole of the entire country. And that can be difficult, right? It is difficult to govern a country. Now, that's exactly why I think that our party is best positioned to lead this country, because we represent the country in all of its forms. And so I do think that not just this election, I think any election cycle, there should always be a gut check who we are, what we will prioritize, and how we'll move forward as a country.
Yeah, absolutely. For voters disillusioned by the last few election cycles, particularly younger voters, what do you think the party must do differently to re-engage and rebuild that critical trust?
Well, as a party that represents the whole of the country, as a party that represents so many voices, I think it's important for those voices to actually have a voice in the party, within the party. And I'm not going to say that doesn't happen, because it certainly does. The party leadership with Democrats is certainly more diverse in experience, diverse in all forms than the Republican Party. But I do think it's important that folks who do feel as if they have been left behind, people who feel like they have been marginalized, do have more of an opportunity for input, have more of an opportunity to voice those concerns and push the party in a direction of continuing to fight for working class values.
Yeah, and speaking of Wisconsin, some of the things that we may not know on a national level that don't make it into the spotlight, could you talk maybe about one or two things that are critical for Wisconsin in this election that nationally we just probably don't know about?
Well, Wisconsin is a very working class state. Wisconsin is a state that has challenges that embody the whole. And when I say that, as I traveled the state when I was running for lieutenant governor, as I traveled the state during my race for the United States Senate last year, it is always more apparent with almost every stop that we put these issues in a box and we say, this is a black issue, this is a white issue, this is a Latino issue, X, Y, Z. But the reality is people want the same things. People deserve the same things. People have been denied the same things, whether it's a good school to send their children to, whether it's a good job that puts food on the table, whether it's being able to go to a doctor, not worrying about a surprise bill, whether it's being able to feel safe and secure in your home, or even just being able to afford a home.
Yeah, the RNG says that Door County in Wisconsin is receiving a lot of national attention from George W. Bush twice to Barack Obama twice to Donald Trump and then to Joe Biden. They pick winners of national elections. What do you see going on there right now?
This is very true. So and it's funny too. 2 years ago, I narrowly lost Door County, just a handful of votes. The governor narrowly won Door County, just a handful of votes, and he was successful in his reelection. I did not go to the United States Senate, so Door County does, in fact, pick a lot of winners and losers, not just in the state, but also has a chance to pick the president, as they typically have done.
Wow, that's a lot riding on Door County.
Yep.
And before we let you go, again, we appreciate your time, Mandela Barnes,
Of course,
the former
thank you.
lieutenant governor. But how will a Harris presidency impact conversations around diversity and representation and leadership, especially considering the historic significance of her candidacy?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, the former president has, tried to make hay as much as he possibly can. He's tried to make this completely disingenuous appeal to black men. I always question how many black men have been in leadership positions, either in his administration or in the Trump organization. The answer is very few, if any, at all. Kamala Harris's time as a U.S. senator, as well as her time in the White House, especially, in the vice president's office, especially her time in the vice president's office, her staff has represented a broad swath of the American people. A lot of black folks in leadership who had never been in positions, where positions like that had never been filled by black people, and it changes the conversation as well. It is a very new era for this country if Kamala Harris is to be elected. There was there's a radio program I was on here in Milwaukee, and they played clips from the Madison Square Garden rally, and someone, one of those wild, just completely insane speakers talked about her said that she was the least qualified person to ever seek the office of president. And the radio host was like, "Don't you just think that is a ridiculous thing to say?" I said, "Well, maybe the guy's right. She is the least male and she's the least white person to ever seek the office of president. So by that standard, by that metric, yeah, sure, she's unqualified then." But all that to say is, I think that in terms of not even just the conversation about inclusion or diversity from a policy perspective, I think about how many people growing up will see themselves in her and think about other avenues in life and other positions of leadership that they may not have otherwise considered because it felt so abstract to them. But then to see Kamala Harris as president makes those things, and at least it hopes makes those things a bit more tangible.
Well, Mandela Barnes, the former lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, we really appreciate you taking the time out today. And we'll be out, like everybody else, watching what happens in Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Mandela Barnes. Folks, continuing our coverage all day long, the 2024 election coming up shortly. Dominic Whitehead from the NAACP should be joining us shortly. But in the meantime, in and around Washington, D.C., again, as we talked about this morning on Let It Be Known, we see all the security measures in place. In fact, within the last hour, I was over by the White House Black Lives Matter Plaza. There are so many Secret Service agents. You normally don't see them walking the street like that, but they are, along with MPD and other law enforcement. So it is heavily police presence. How about that? And so this is the state of American elections. We've talked to people about it. We've talked to folks, even from the Netherlands today, who feel like they have a vested interest in what's going on. Someone from Great Britain we spoke to as well, a couple, in fact. And we also talked to white women about their support for the vice president, which is a really, really big thing today. We have Win with Black Women. We have all of these other groups. And one group that seems to always stick to their pattern is white women. This year may be different. And we're starting to recognize that they too want certain things that they're just not going to get from MAGA Republicans. And so we will continue our coverage. Again, we're expecting Dominic Whitehead from the NAACP momentarily. And we have others. RNG, we also have later, just for you, the Red Bone. She should be joining us later in the broadcast as well. So go ahead and do your barbecue, whatever you sit down, grab a beer, and enjoy the coverage. Also, don't forget tonight, there's Black media, Black-owned media is covering this election. Obviously, we'll be tuning in with Roland Martin later tonight, but also on WIN TV, the Washington Informer's network, their Let's Talk is what it's called. They'll be broadcasting live, as well as the 2-minute warning, the West Side Gazette and Bobby Henry, the Sacramento Observer, of course, with Larry Lee, who is actually going to join us on this program today as well. But he too will be live streaming today's activity. So lots to offer you from Black-owned media. Folks, you don't have to go to CNN. You don't have to go to Fox. You don't have to go to the other networks. The Black press will have it covered. Here.
It's extremely important.
Here we go.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to vote, especially this year.
And why do you say especially this year?
I think there's a lot of stakes here, and one direction could be very, very bad for most people in our country.
Well, is there a specific thing that concerns you most, a policy that concerns you the most?
I think public education and women's rights.
Women's rights, okay.
Yes.
And as far as women's rights are concerned, we hear so much about that. We see rights being taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, to be specific, is that what concerns you?
Yes, definitely.
And so we're not going to ask you who you're voting for, but that kind of drives your vote.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what concerns you about other women who may not see it that way?
I think that regardless of whether someone else sees it that way, I think that no matter who you are, you should just be able to have the own autonomy to make choices about your body. So no one needs to tell someone what to do, but you should be telling people what not to do. So
it sounds like this year is more clear for you than perhaps other years.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. And what's your name?
My name's Zoe.
And Zoe, where are you from?
I'm from North Carolina, but I've been living in DC for 3.5 years now.
Oh, great. And you're with?
Tim,
what about you? Your thoughts on this election? How important it is for you?
it's extremely important, and I'll tell you right now, I voted for Kamala. It's not a hard choice.
No.
We can't have Trump as our president again. He's going to set our country back, and he's not looking out for our best interests. He's looking out for his. So,
and as Zoe articulated, like a lot of women, bodily autonomy is certainly an issue that women have really are really firm about. What about you as a male? What is the issue for you?
I mean, obviously that as well. Just because I'm not a female doesn't mean I don't care about that. But I mean, for me, it's more just about Trump. We can't have him in office, and he's only looking out for his best interests, like I said, and he's gonna be doing things to just help his own pockets, like his crypto schemes and all that stupid stuff, man. So it's just more about we need someone that knows what they're doing and is actually a professional.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you guys stopping. It's lunchtime. Have fun.
Thank you.
All right. He's getting text.
Sorry? Were you on that?
Be known news. It's a black.
Yes.
So watch it.
Yeah.
So you're that early voting.
Yeah, early voting.
How important is it this year?
Huh?
How important is that this year for you?
Voting is always important. It's part of being a citizen. So
Are you concerned about potential violence? We see the stores boarded up.
Man, I'm a security officer, so I'm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm always concerned about violence.
okay.
But that's all I got to say.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too. So he's a security officer. So he is he's helping to secure DC. So, but there's a lot going on, and there's been some issues with some polls, and we know that there's been some non-credible threats in Georgia that the Secretary of State there said that it originated from Russia, of all places. And more than 81 million Americans cast their ballots before Election Day, according to the latest figures that were put out about an hour ago, actually. And in 2022, there were probably about 40 million who cast their votes early. So we're way ahead of the pace there. And so enthusiasm obviously is high, especially in battleground states. So after breaking advanced turnout records on their first days of early voting, Georgia and North Carolina continued to see early voting that exceeds 2020. Several other swing states, including Arizona, Michigan, and Nevada, have kept pace or exceeded 2020. So we are seeing folks coming out, at least in the early voting. So we'll see what happens. We're seeing a lot of people wearing "I voted" pins or stickers on their clothing. They're taking this serious, which is probably a good thing for Democrats, because generally the Democrats do hold the edge when it comes to the popular vote. But this seems to be a pretty overwhelming number, which is
This is
could
a
only
tight election.
favor
Anybody telling
the
you it's
vice
going to be a
president.
blowout one way or the other has some secret magic ball the rest of us don't know about. It's going to be a close election, but we can't know what the margin is going to be. And that's going to be determinative of when we know. People like, in 2020, guess what? We had a great election day. Everything went fantastic. There were no lines. We loved it. It was great. Same thing's going to happen this time. We're going to have a great election day. This all be determinative on the actual outcomes.
Now, election officials added that the election won't be
Okay, so I was looking for sound there. I'm sorry about that. Again, the historic election 2024, Howard University is jam-packed as we speak. We know that the lines to get in there are extensive. Trying to get into that area there is such a hassle, but there are some who will be broadcasting live from there, and others that will be getting feeds from Howard University. We will be crisscrossing the city as we have been today, trying to bring you the very latest and as much information as possible. And again, around the country today, there will be Black-owned media bringing you information. So tune in. When TV, network, tune in, folks. Evening, as well as the 2-minute warning with the West Side Gazette in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Sacramento. That's what I'm trying. Sacramento, California. Larry Lee doing his thing there, and here, of course, let it be known we'll be going for all afternoon, as we expect. Again, a representative from the NAACP to join us shortly. We're going to talk about their GOTV and the projects they've had. Be on the ground in places like Georgia, where it's vital, a vital swing state that could determine who is the next president of the United States. We also have conversations with strategists, hitting their perspective on pre and post-election planning. And there's a lot of planning still to be done, as we don't know when this race is finally called. For states where we'll see the polls close in a few hours. And of course, okay, so there, just getting some details here. But we'll bring you some of those poll closures and A couple of them will be in swing states. So obviously, we won't know the counts for at least a few hours in some of these places, and in other cases may not be for days. But the thing to watch too is Vice President Harris at Howard University, and see the statements that might come out of there. Obviously, the former president who has already said he's going to come to victory one way or the other. So concerned about the election being stolen, concerned about folks from the MAGA side sabotaging, and of course, we know there's a slate of officers that are in position to do the same thing that they did, try to do in 2020. There's a lot of reasons to be nervous on both sides. So we will see what that brings tonight. But again, we have a guest that we have lined up to bring you information that perhaps you're not going to get anywhere else. And of course, we have some of our own, Larry Lee. Okay, so joining us now from the NAACP is Dominic Whitehead. Dominic, welcome to Let It Be Known.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's good to have you. We know that the NAACP has been doing a lot of get out the vote efforts. They have been mobilizing communities across critical battleground states, among other places. Can you tell us where what you're hearing from Black voters on the ground and how they are responding to the freedom is at stake message?
Yeah, we are focusing in and across about 12 key battleground states this election cycle. But what we are hearing on the ground in real time, the Black voters are actually excited this election cycle, right? And excited about voting, but most importantly, I'm excited about this message around freedom because Black voters do know what is at stake when it comes to democracy. But Black voters are also, in my opinion, one of the most educated voting blocs, if you will. And so they're looking at the differences between both candidates. And getting the understanding and knowing the understanding between both candidates, and know one candidate clearly stands for one set of policies and another candidate stands for a better set of policies that can not only better this country, but the lives of Black Americans as well.
Yeah, and with such a massive mobilization effort in place and that have been in place, what have been some of the most significant challenges that you guys have faced in putting this together, trying to get these this information to voters and critically engaging Black voters, especially in states where voting barriers are high?
I think some of the difficulties we've seen this election cycle, and we've been seeing it the last few election cycles, has truly been a lot of mis and disinformation, right? So information being targeted specifically to our community, particularly on the disinformation side, particularly to Black men and younger Black men. And so those are some of the challenges we have been continuing to fight through and really push through the noise around that by really telling the facts of what is at stake in terms of a policy piece and in terms of what are the needs and the needs for Black voters. And so to that, we invested well over $1.5 million in our messaging research this election cycle. And the reason that we did that, we wanted to make sure we understood where Black voters stood and where they were on the issues, but also make sure we had a temperature check throughout the election cycle of how Black voters were moving on how they were voting and who they would be voting for as well.
Well, we've seen, you talked about disinformation and misinformation. With Elon Musk taking over Twitter, we've seen a phenomenal growth in disinformation and misinformation. How have you been able to overcome that?
Being a trusted messenger, right? NAACP is the most trusted messenger in the Black community when it comes to all things voting, democracy, voting rights, and just key issues around that. So being able to get ahead of that, being able to inoculate the voters that we're engaging, being in different spaces and on different platforms. We expanded our digital program this year. We expanded our Black radio program, both streaming and traditional radio. We're reaching out to voters via text, via phones, and on the doors, and having those conversations and pushing back on that. But most importantly, having a very coordinated election protection effort this election cycle that's happening now in real time across several states, where we are coordinating and leading the efforts as NAACP with many of our partners. And when we see information, we're reporting it in real time, making sure that information is factual and getting it out to trusted messengers on the ground to make sure it is zipped up. So that's the beauty of NAACP, as you know, long-term and long-time trusted messenger in the community.
Yeah, you mentioned about Black men. We know that there's been a lot of talk about Black men all summer long, particularly after the vice president got into the race. What are you hearing? What have you heard directly from this voting bloc?
What we hear, I think there's been a lot of talk, but what I've heard, what I think is amazing about it, when have Black men been centered like this? And I think it's a good thing that Black men are being centered and being discussed in the conversation. It's not about candidate A or about candidate B, but it's about who and centering the conversation of the needs around Black men. Let's be very clear. Black men is the second largest voting bloc in this country, and that's the Black women. Black women vote at 90+% of the time. Black men voted 85 to about 89% of the time in terms of showing up election cycle after election cycle. And so if a little persuasion needs to happen to come out and talk to Black men about their issues, whether it be the economy, right, whether it be anything dealing with healthcare, whether it be criminal justice reform, public safety, etc., those are the issues. We know that Black men are also not a monolith, and we also can expect identity politics, right? We have to move past that. We're looking for someone who is a leader. We're just not voting for someone because they so happen to be of color, but knowing that they are of color and knowing that they can stand for us, and understand the policies and the things that matter and working for the Black male vote, I think is a big plus around that. But I think Black men will show up and show out this election cycle. We've already seen trends of Black men supporting and moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and we all know what Donald Trump stands for. He's made it more clear probably than he's ever had before. And we also realize how important it is to have allies. And I know that with the Freedom is at Stake coalition, it includes a powerful lineup of civil rights and racial justice organizations and partners like the AFT, SEIU. How has that worked out to know that you have these allies, and what have been their role specifically?
Yeah, I think that worked out. It works out well. We are huge partners and in partnership and do work with our labor unions and so many other progressive organizations. Most recently, we just finished an activation here in Philadelphia with AFT just a few days ago. around GOTV and SEIU and AFSCME and so many of the other unions as well. For us, we know one attack against one is an attack on all of us. An attack on worker rights is an attack on voting rights. An attack on worker rights is an attack on Black folks, because we know Black folks are union members, right? And so NAACP have to be 10 toes in and stand right beside our partners and allies. It helps with the resources and the capacity, and allow us to get to scale to talk to all the voters that we need to engage.
Yeah, and what's resonating most with young African Americans in particular?
There's a few things that resonate most with young African Americans in particular. I think one, it is the economy. We got to talk about it, right? We think about affordable housing, right? We think about student loan debt, right? There's a lot of student loan debt out there. Be very clear. The Biden-Harris administration has been very, very vocal about relieving folks of student debt and student loan debt. But we think about the cost of groceries, right? Folks, when we say affordable housing, it comes to whether rent or being able to have the pathway to home ownership. So those are things directly that matter to many young voters. But then you also think about climate control and environmental issues. From our research, we saw a lot of that when it came to younger voters, particularly voters between the ages of 18 and about 25 around that. But if you spin it out to 18 to 35 or 18 to 40, is definitely the economy around their survival in the near future. And that has been resonating with younger voters.
Yes, it's interesting. You mentioned environmental issues. I was going to ask you about that. That seems to finally be coming to the fore now. How important is that, especially given that we know that the other side, the MAGA folks, seem to could care less about environmental issues?
Yeah, man. It was yesterday. It was 68 degrees, and I'm here in Philadelphia at the top of November. We know climate change and global warming is a real thing. I think it's a good thing that, you know, again, I started the segment off that Black folks, particularly Black men, but Black people, we are not a monolith, right? We all don't just care about the same 2 or 3 issues. We do care about the environment. We do care about what the world would look like 10, 15, 20 years from now for our children, right? And so I think it is good to see this now rooted in research, and that research among Black voters and Black people are starting to be over-indexed and not underpolled around the issues that matter. And so we're starting to see some of those things that we know in our community we've always cared about. But now I think the world is understanding that we can organize and build around that in a different way.
Yeah, we also know that reproductive justice has been something at the core of the NAACP's push, particularly in these last few years since Roe v. Wade. Talk about that a little bit, and what has that been among the things that have galvanized Black voters?
Yes, that's been a big piece. That is one of the second piece when we've done a lot of our most recent research with HIT strategies and heart research overall. But we do know that reproductive rights is a big piece, not just for Black women. They're over-indexed for Black men as well. Black men care about their moms, their sisters, their aunties, and the list goes on. But I think the other piece, and I use Ohio as an example from the 2023 election cycle last November, a ballot measure there where Black men overperform all demographics on supporting reproductive rights as a constitutional amendment, right? And we're seeing that today as well as a top issue among Black voters in general, because we know an attack on reproductive rights, in one area is an attack on voting rights. It's an attack on any of the rights. We saw affirmative action earlier this summer, right? And the list just goes on and on around the attacks that can happen. And so being in solidarity with women, knowing that Black women are more likely to have complications in childbirth than any other demographic, I think Black men and Black people are making sure that we take reproductive rights seriously this election cycle.
Yeah, and when it comes to mobilization, no other organization perhaps ever has had the success of the NAACP in motivating and mobilizing folks to get out. And you've been a part of this now for a few years and leading major voter mobilization campaigns, including the largest independent Black voter mobilization effort in 2020. How does this turnout compare to the lessons from the past, particularly 2020?
Yeah, lots of lessons, right? 2020, we touched about close to 10 million Black voters. We increased that this year to about 15 million Black voters that we wanted to engage. So we're trying to double the impact, if you will. We're around about 16.5 million collectively this year of Black voters that we're engaging overall. We're running a $20 million program this year, right? Not only that, we're also making sure that we're reinvesting into communities. So out of that $20 million program, we pushed about 6.5 million of that back to our groups on the ground, our NEACP units, and other Black and Brown organizations who are doing voter registration, voter turnout, voter education, election protection work overall. We're trying to make sure we increase and close our Black radio gaps and making sure that we're getting messages out on Black radio. Our canvassing program, well over 200,000 doors knocked this election cycle and talked to over 1 million people via phone. So there's a lot of pieces that we're looking at overall.
Well, Dominic Whitehead, NAACP, we really appreciate you taking out the time to join Let It Be Known this afternoon on a very crucial, historic day in American history. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Pooper. Austin, there he is.
My man, Stacy, brother.
Austin, you came to rescue a drowning man over here.
No, brother. Anything I could do. Whenever you call, I always do my best to make myself available.
Well, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
So what's going on, Austin? What are you seeing? We've been around DC today. What are you seeing?
I've not. I voted in Maryland this morning. Polls opened, Stacy, at 7. I was in line at 6:30. There were maybe 8-10 people ahead of me. By the time the doors opened at the school where I had to vote, I looked back and there were maybe 40 people. By the time I voted, I came out and there were, cars were pulling up. So it was very good turnout from what I could see in Maryland. Here, and I just ran into several of my neighbors as I was getting out of the car, and they said they're on their way to vote. So everybody in my community, I went to a car wash about an hour and a half ago. Everybody's talking about voting. Either I've already voted or I'm going to vote. So there is real excitement here, obviously, to put the vice president across the finish line, Stacy. Also, I'm claiming it, Senator Angela Alsobrook. Yeah, so it's great turnout. Stacy, I spent the last 2 weekends in Pennsylvania canvassing. The DNC, as I'm sure you're aware and Greer's aware, organized bus tour to different parts of PA. So last week I was in Chester County, Pennsylvania, and I and my partner knocked on maybe 90 doors. This past Sunday, I was up there, and Lafayette and I, Denise's husband, knocked on maybe 65 doors. Many people were not there, but everybody that we spoke to, Stacy, in Pennsylvania, had either voted, was going to vote, and are very, very cautiously optimistic, very prayerful that we're going to carry Pennsylvania. Nobody was comfortable. Nobody said we got this in the bag. Everybody was just like, we got to do this. You're hoping and praying. I'm encouraging everybody in my family, friends, to get out and vote. But here's one thing that I found especially interesting on both of my trips. I and nobody, Stacy, who went to the other areas of Pennsylvania when we regrouped at the end of the day, none of us saw any Trump supporters, any Trump campaign staffers canvassing.
Right.
And to me, that was very encouraging because they don't appear to have a serious, didn't appear to have a serious ground game, which is, critical, I think, to any successful campaign. You did see Trump signs, bumper stickers, even a couple of Trump flags. But in terms of, walking up down the street like we were, not one.
Yeah. And Austin's been doing a lot of texting day and night. But one of the things that you recently, within a few moments ago, texted this, and wondered if you had any more information on this. Got a text from you saying that the U.S. Capitol Police officers just arrested a man who was stopped during a screening process at the Capitol Visitor Center. The man smelled like fuel, had a torch, and a flare gun. The Visitors Bureau or Visitor Center is closed for tours for the day while this is under investigation. What do you know about this, Austin?
That was sent to me by a former college classmate of mine who's used to be a part of the Secret Service. So he sent that to me. I just glanced at it before I came on the air with you and wanted to share. But Stacy, a couple of days ago, I believe in Georgia, a Trump supporter walked up to a 77-year-old white woman in line to vote and punched her in the stomach. So I mean,
How old?
He was 17 and she was 77, and was standing in line during early voting. And he had been antagonistic towards several people, I guess, in line who he deemed were supporters of the vice president. But this was a white lady. He just walked up to her, no provocation, obviously, by her, and just punched her as hard as he could in the stomach, and then ran off. And someone caught him and held him until the police detained him.
Wow, that is horrible. Quentin James is going to be joining us now, Austin. So hang tight. Join the conversation, actually, Austin. Quentin James, welcome to Let It Be Known.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Doing great. Now, Quentin, you're outside. Where exactly are you?
Sorry, I'm in Washington, D.C. I came outside. We have what we call a war room, right?
I lost Quentin's.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
There you go.
There we go. I am outside here in Washington, D.C., right outside of our war room. Again, we're getting ready for the results tonight, tracking what's happening around the country. And I can tell you there's been a tremendous response around the country to this election. We are excited about turnout throughout the nation. And I think we're going to be very excited about the results tonight as well.
So that sounds like a lot of confidence, Quentin, with all that has been going on. So you've seen a lot over the last couple of years with the collective PAC, particularly as it pertains to this particular race. What has been the turning point, other than, of course, President Biden dropping out? But what do you believe has been the turning point that gives you this type of enthusiasm and encouragement?
I mean, listen, it started the first 24 to 48 hours after the vice president became the presumptive nominee. We have never seen in American politics 50,000 Black men organize within 48 hours, themselves, organize their money to support a Black candidate, a Black woman candidate, like we saw with Vice President Harris during those 48 hours. Over $3 million raised in 48 hours. I think that, for me, was the moment I knew this would be a very different, exciting election. But I think over and over, we've seen examples. She's run a flawless campaign, whether it was her debate, whether it was the DNC, whether it was every single thing that Hannah has led us to this point. She's been amazing. And so, again, I think there isn't anything I would take back in terms of, mistakes she's made. I don't think she's made any mistakes. But I think we've seen some historical markers that we'll be studying for years to come, particularly around this opportunity agenda for Black men. We've never had a presidential candidate say, Black men, I see you. Here's a plan for you of how I want to address your concerns and needs. And so, again, I think it's been an incredible journey to get us here to today.
There's talk of Iowa and the vice president going in today with a 4-point lead there. How big is that, Quentin, when you do the pollings, or you hear the pollings and hear Iowa? What is that telling you about America and how this thing may go tonight?
Well, yeah, listen, I think we are going to see some interesting results as it pertains to white women. I believe that white women are breaking extremely hard to the vice president across the country. I don't believe they were honest if they were polled over the past 3 months. I think in these last 48 to 72 hours, white women have gotten together and made some decisions around who they're going to be supporting for president, and that's going to be Vice President Harris. I'm predicting she gets over 55% of white
Wow.
women voters, which will be historic. But again, when you do something as drastic as roll back Roe v. Wade, there are consequences. We've seen these consequences over the past few months and the past year. Every single state where this has been on the ballot, that issue has prevailed in terms of people fighting for their right to have reproductive justice. And so I think, again, tonight we're going to see punishment for Republicans overreaching on that issue, and women aren't taking it anymore.
Quentin, is there anything that gives you pause a little bit, that lends to any type of fear that you might have, perhaps that the campaign didn't cover?
The only thing that I'm a little nervous about is black turnout in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania market. We still have time for folks to go vote. If you're in Philadelphia, if you're watching this, or in Pennsylvania at all, get to the polls. That's the one area where I think we could have done more. Obviously, we only had 100 days really to kind of, do this work, but that's the one place where I wish we had a couple more weeks to really deeply engage there and get in front of voters to make sure that we could kind of guarantee that turnout. But that's the one place I'm a little nervous as we head into the election results tonight.
Yeah, obviously, swing state. Under that, guys, can you talk about other swing states, perhaps Georgia, North Carolina?
Yeah,
what's going on there? How do you feel?
I feel really good about the southern states, Georgia, North Carolina. Don't forget about Florida as well.
Is that realistic?
I think it might be closer than what we think. And here's why. In North Carolina and in Georgia, before today, over 50% of the registered black women voters had already cast their vote. Over half of them had already voted early. Those are historic numbers, because typically we see somewhere between 65 to 70% of black women showing up to vote in presidential elections. I think tonight we're going to look and we're going to possibly see that number approach 80, maybe even 85% of registered black women showing up to vote in those states. And if that is the case, and we see this kind of crossover voting of white women and Republicans, there might be some surprises tonight. And so, again, I'm not being too bullish about that, but I am just looking at the early vote numbers and saying that we've seen a higher turnout in early vote of black women than we've ever seen before. I think that is a sign of what we might see tonight with those results, especially because we're hearing about long lines across those states all day today. So turnout is strong, and I think that only bodes well for Vice President Harris tonight.
Are you concerned about the possibility of, like we saw with the ballots being burned, we see all of these fake electors that have returned? Are you concerned about those efforts, the stealing the election side of things?
I'm actually not. And let me tell you why. What's so interesting about these swing states in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in North Carolina, in Arizona, we have Democratic governors, folks that are going to make sure that their elections are protected and by the book and by the law. We know right now there's only one party that wants us to count every single vote. That's Democrats. Republicans are, probably going to be filing, cases tonight to maybe stop the count or not count votes, not allow time for mail-in ballots to come in. Only one party is doing that because they know the more people that show up, the worse they do in these elections. And so as people who defend democracy, we want to make sure every vote is counted. But I feel strong that because we have Democratic governors in those states, we're going to see safe and secure and free and fair elections. And again, should all of my analysis be wrong and every vote is counted and, Donald Trump wins, then we will accept those results. But based on everything I'm seeing, I don't think that'll be the case tonight.
And what about the other races that tend to get overlooked when there's a presidential race, but the House is important, the Senate is important? What are you seeing in those two situations?
Yes, listen, you heard it first. Hakeem Jeffries will become the first Black Speaker of the House, either tonight or the next 48 hours. We will know. That is locked in. I am nervous about the Senate. We have 3 high-profile Black candidates running for the U.S. Senate. Angela Alsobrooks in Maryland, Colin Allred in Texas, and obviously it'll be called probably at 8 p.m. tonight, the senator-elect from Delaware, Lisa Blunt Rochester. So we will have a Black woman in the Senate tonight, another Black woman, maybe 2. Hopefully we can pull this through in Maryland. And also, again, don't sleep on Texas. The race has been tight there this entire season. I think, again, we're seeing historic turnout. We've seen numbers, 35-40% of registered Black voters have already voted in Texas before today. So these are major numbers going into Election Day. And so I feel really good about all these races and all these opportunities for us to build Black political power.
Wow. So Quentin James says you heard it first. Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House. Wow.
The first Black Speaker of the House. And we got to celebrate that, right? This is a major moment in terms of policy impacts. The president, the White House is important, but having that leader in the House to drive policy will be really important as well.
Quentin James, the president of the Collective PAC, the founder and president of the Collective PAC. We really appreciate you joining Let It Be Known. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Wow. So some heavy predictions there. And he's backing it up with numbers. And so here we are. We will see what happens there. And I know that a lot of people are hoping that Quentin is correct, including perhaps journalist Jeff Johnson. Jeff, thanks for joining Let It Be Known.
Absolutely. How are you?
Doing good. So, Jeff, you've been a strong voice on issues of race, politics, culture. What's your sense of the mood in the country today as people head to the polls? And how do you think this election reflects broader cultural and social economic issues?
Yeah, I think that the country is sober. I mean, I think you probably remember what it was like in 2012, where it was Obama's second run. Folks weren't totally excited. Everything in the country was not great, but they recognized the need to turn out. They recognized how important their vote was. And I think we're seeing something similar. I think there are those that are excited about Vice President Harris's run, but I think that there are those that still don't like how much things cost, that they're concerned with inflation, that they don't like what's happening in Gaza, that they would like to see Palestinians better supported. I think that there are a ton of issues that Black folks in particular on a spectrum, right, think that, listen, I'm gonna ride with Kamala, but me and the Democrats got some conversation we got to have when this thing is over. So I think that there's a sober reality that is mixed between an excitement around Kamala being something different, but also recognizing that maybe there's some things that we didn't do with President Obama that we need to do with President Harris. And that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah. That sounds, though, the way you put it, it does sound pretty positive for her and the Democrats, though, still.
No, listen, I think that I am optimistically nervous. I'm optimistic because I think people are going to turn out. I think they recognize the stakes. I think that there are some people that got on it immediately and they're like, this is what I'm doing. There's some people that took them a little bit longer to get there. But I am encouraged by not only the early vote numbers that I'm seeing, but the number of people that I think we're seeing at the polls today. And I'm also encouraged by Republican electeds that are saying on my watch is not going to be no shenanigans. I think that there is a sense of commitment to the Constitution. We'll see. We still got a number of hours to see how that's going to play out. But to hear, And listen, I mean, it's the same thing we heard 4 years ago, right? We had a narrative coming from Trump and his folks about how there was fraud and how there were shenanigans taking place, and even the Republican secretaries of state then said, no, there's not. So I'm encouraged in that regard, but I'm pretty positive that somewhere around 11 o'clock tonight, Trump is going to claim victory, no matter what the numbers are. And so I think we've got to be really patient in the process. We've got to know that sometime around midnight to 3 a.m., we're still not going to have results in every state. Pennsylvania, which is a state that both candidates need. They've already talked today about the fact that they are going to count votes more quickly than they did 4 years ago. But it's still going to be a question of how close it is. And the closer it is, the longer it's going to take to certify. And so I really hope the folks that are tuning in recognize that just because it takes longer than tonight doesn't mean something is wrong with the process, that it actually is allowing the process to work out. We need to be calm. Those that do have issues at the polls, if you have had an issue at the poll and you haven't reported it, call 866-OUR-VOTE and report that, because that is an election protection line that has done right by us, not just for this cycle, but in previous cycles. But I'm encouraging calm through this process. I think there will be attorneys in particular that let us know when they need to ring the bell for crisis. But patience is going to be key as we watch these states certify these votes tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, and being around DC today, talking to different people, we've also talked to people from like the Netherlands and Great Britain. You've had conversations, Jeff, with leaders worldwide and grassroots communities alike. How would you compare the U.S. political landscape to the global conversations on democracy and social justice?
Well, listen, I mean, I think we realized, those that were paying attention saw that Great Britain and France had incredibly disruptive elections, where you saw conservative power bases get disrupted, and you saw liberals gain power that I don't think anybody would have anticipated prior to the election. I think we might see the same thing tonight, whether it's issues of abortion, whether it is the fact that you literally have, if he's not a fascist, he keeps wearing fascist clothes every day. And people, even conservatives and Republicans, are saying we want our party back from this nutbag. And so I think there may be similar trends of what we've seen in Western Europe over the course of this year, in a real statement by the electorate that we don't want right-wing fascism or extremism in our electoral process. But I don't think anybody would argue that despite the imperfections in our system, despite some of the challenges that many of us have with the Electoral College, we still have one of the most well-run elections of any election anywhere in the world.
You have mentioned the word fascism. We know that Trump has certainly displayed that, among other things. So with that, and as you mentioned about other nations, why is this so close, or appears to be so close?
Well, listen, we have an incredible divide in this country, and Trump has helped fuel that divide, if we're honest. I mean, you and I both know the stark realities between urban poor and rural poor are not that far. But the poor are constantly used as a political football and are manipulated by those that want to use them. And Trump has done that very clearly. When we think about King's assassination, King was assassinated because he was attempting to unite the poor. And he recognized that the urban poor, that were primarily people of color, and rural poor, both white and black, had been divided based on urbanism and ruralism in ways that just didn't make any sense, because they were all being abused. There's a real opportunity that we have in this country, hopefully, in getting Trump out of the way, to heal some wounds and to help people understand that they are far more aligned. I mean, if we're talking about Trump's 2017 tax cuts, that's a reason to get out to the polls and vote, because you're talking about extending tax cuts that are only about the super rich. It's not just about wealthy white people aren't benefiting from an extension of Trump's tax cuts. Only the ultra wealthy are benefiting from that. And when you've got somebody who's manipulating white and rural poor as if he's standing for them, but supporting policy that directly is in opposition of their interests, let alone ours, there's a healing process that I think over the next few years, a certain type of leader and set of leaders and organizations and institutions have a real opportunity to calm some of the insanity that Trump has helped create.
From a pure observatory standpoint, observing what's been going on, are you confident that Democrats were able to exploit Trump for what he really is? I mean, he seemed to do a good job of that himself, but Democrats historically have not been able to capitalize.
You know what I think Democrats did well is they finally helped tell Vice President Harris's story.
Mm-hmm.
Trump, you didn't need help for Trump to show who he is. Like he's signing up for that every day of the week to show you how unhinged he is, to show you how hateful he is, to show you how narcissistic he is. I didn't start using the word fascist until this event in Madison Square Garden. I'm a comms person, right? So I'm very careful about how I use words. But that shit was nuts. And excuse my language. I mean, it was insane on every imaginable level. And if we were afraid to call that fascism, then we don't know what fascism is. But what I've been encouraged by is you had a candidate who has had decades of experience, and the vast majority of people didn't know her story. It wasn't as if she was given leeway during the 2020 elections to tell her story. And by and large, she was quiet in the last 3.5 years about her story and her trajectory. So I think that it was a magnificent job in 90 days to begin to dispel myths about who she was as a prosecutor, about the issues that she cared about the work that she's done, and the fact, like, when was the last time you saw a Black person in politics, let alone a woman, that was this perfect fusion of gangster and joy? Like that is incredibly, as a Black man, you know how hard that is to do, brother. Like it is incredibly difficult to be a perfect fusion of gangster and joy. And I have been amazed by VP Harris's ability to be strong in the areas that she is competent in. And if we're going to be honest, she's one of the most credible presidential candidates in the history of electoral politics, not just in this race. Mm-hmm. You were a district attorney, you were attorney general, you were a senator, you were a vice president. What are we talking about? When we even begin to question qualification, you don't have to agree with everything she's done, but to question qualifications of a district attorney, an attorney general, a senator, and a vice president is nuts. And it speaks to what we've allowed certain narratives to do to our logic. And so I'm proud of her campaign's ability to tell her story. The fact that there was nowhere she was afraid to go. And again, that wasn't about talking about Trump's negatives. Most people remember in 2016, I worked for Priorities USA on the comm side, and a week before the election, we were still talking negative Trump because there wasn't a lot of positive Hillary. And that's not what we've experienced in this race. She's taken on the negatives head on. She's gone every place. She went to Fox News. She's gone to places that I think most Democrats would have said, you don't need to go there because it's hostile. And she's gone there anyway. That is what has made the difference in this campaign. You can talk negative about Trump all day long. That does not win you elections. What wins you elections is when you can talk clearly about what you want. You can talk about your story. You're not afraid to look people in the eye who you know don't support you. And you're willing to say, listen, I'm going to represent you too. That's what this campaign has done brilliantly.
Wow, I just enjoyed the way you articulated that. That's for sure. Dr. Nicole says, for those that don't see and know who Trump is, they don't want to know. They don't even care. With that, Jeff, how much are you anticipating folks looking back at Madison Square Garden and that event and saying that that was the final nail in Trump's coffin?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that there may have been that might have been the nail in the coffin for some moderate conservatives, moderate Republicans. I don't think the vast majority of people that were Democrats or independents. I mean, that was a cherry on the top of a sundae that was 12 feet high. But I do think that there are some conservative Latinos that were like, oh, hell no. I think that there were some classic conservatives that aren't right-wing nut jobs that said, this is enough. This is not what our party represents. Because that's not who John McCain was. That's not who, that's not who classic conservatives have been. I don't often agree with everything that they fight for, but there have been conservatives that don't hate Americans. And this is a guy who literally hates Americans and wants to encourage other Americans to hate Americans. So I think that the Madison Square Garden in a lot of ways was a cherry on the top of a 12-foot sundae, more than it was a nail in a coffin, because most people didn't need Madison Square Garden to know who he was, who he's been, who he's purporting to be, what his policy agenda is. You don't say you want to give cops full immunity and think that you care about urban communities. You don't say that you want to take away the right of a woman to choose what she does with her body and think you care about women. How can you have a daughter and say you want to take away the right of a woman to choose what she does with her body? That says everything people need to know about who you are. When you're talking about terrorists, as if people don't understand what that means. You're acting as if it's a nationalistic kind of thing to be proud of. Any entrepreneur who does product knows that tariffs are going to cost me more money because I'm going to pay the cost for those goods to be brought into the country and be taxed to that degree. So just everything he's done at every level, all you got to do is just peel back one layer and see he does not care about Americans. So no, brother, I think it was a cherry, not a nail.
And just a couple more things before we let you go, Jeff. You mentioned about the conservative Latinos saying, hey, wait a minute. What about the Byron Donalds of the world, the Tim Scotts of the world, the Black conservatives? How do you explain them?
Well, I mean, if we're going to be for real, if you are a Black man over the age of 45, you are probably conservative. That does not mean you are a right-wing nut job, right? So let's be clear about the complexities of what we're dealing with in our electorate. Black people, by and large, especially those over a certain age, have been church-raised social conservatives and even fiscal conservatives. Black people who worked in factories, who worked agriculture, who worked 9 to 5, that never were wealthy, but did right with their money, that owned their own homes, that took care of their kids, that sent their kids to college. These were fiscally conservative people. These are primarily Muslims or Christians who had conservative faith views about morality, about marriage, about relationship. So the fact that we are acting as if a shift in generational politics means that we as Black people have been traditionally liberal just isn't an accurate view of history or cultural reality. So I think that the Tim Scotts of the world have just been manipulated and decided, I'm going to sell my soul for political gain. But there is a vast number of brothers, Black men in particular, because Black men, I think in particular, are more insular when they think about their political views versus Black women who are much more communal. Black men have been conservatives. They just have not been right-wing nut jobs. And so I think we need to be real careful about delineating between average Black men over a certain age who have traditionally been conservative, and those like Tim Scott, who have allowed themselves to sell their soul to a party in the name of trying to get power in a place they're never going to be given power.
Yeah, Jeff, last thing before we let you go, at the end of tonight, perhaps tomorrow, a couple of days from now, where do you see this ended up?
I'm a double down on Quentin's prediction, and say we're going to see Hakeem Jeffries be the Speaker of the House, leader of the House, and I believe, I've been on the ground in Charlotte and in Detroit and in Pittsburgh and in Philly. I think that the work that our sisters like Jotega and others have done with Black women, that my brother Quentin and others have done with Black men, that the faith community has done, like we have been working to ensure that people have accurate information. I believe that we're going to be able to pull this out. The question is, are we going to be able to ensure that that we hold accountable and that we use the government in the proper way to ensure that Trump is only able to create a small level of discord and confusion versus what we saw 4 years ago.
Wow. Well, Jeffrey Johnson, journalist extraordinaire and a comms guy. We appreciate you so much, and we hope you come back and join us.
Oh, listen, anytime you invite me, I am a fan. I appreciate the conversations that you have and the way that you have them. So anytime you want me, brother, I'm there.
Well, we appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Folks, again, we are wall to wall here in Washington. It is election night, and we will be here with several insiders, folks who are on the ground in some of the key battleground states. I know Austin is still in the background here. Okay, we lost Austin. Austin's probably hobnobbing with someone at this point, but we do expect some commentary out of Georgia, things more about Wisconsin, and Larry Lee from the Sacramento Observer is going to be joining us to talk about what's going on out in the Golden State. So just stay tuned with us, folks. We got so much going on today. We've been out in the streets. Again, what is astonishing me is seeing all of even the hotels have their windows boarded up and businesses having their storefronts boarded. The White House with a huge facade in front of it, anticipating some serious violence. And that is all incited by the twice impeached, the 34 times convicted former president, who really, he's running, folks, as you know, to stay out of jail. He is scheduled to be sentenced if he loses the election in 2 weeks. He's scheduled to be sentenced in New York on 34 felony counts. And in addition to that, trial will then be able to move forward in the election interference case in Washington. And of course, Fani Willis is chomping at the bit to proceed with her racketeering case against the former president. And he's well aware of all of this. And so the desperation has kicked in, and we've seen him unhinged like never before. As Dr. Nicole pointed out, even that J.D. Vance, his running mate, referring to the vice president as, quote, trash. They are desperate. That is signs of a desperate campaign. And we've never seen anything like it before. And nothing like it has been acceptable before. And so it stands to reason that to take a line from Donald Trump, that America finally says, Donald Trump, you're fired. And this is this will be it for his political career and perhaps his freedom, because I just can't imagine Joe Biden or Kamala Harris offering a pardon based on the divisive and reckless way he has torn this country apart. And speaking of the country and not tearing us apart, Larry works to bring people together. We will give him that much. 90 years of the Sacramento of the 90?
No, 62.
62.
62.
Well, you look older than what you are then.
Hey, it's been a long day.
Larry Lee, the 2023 Publisher of the Year for the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Larry, thanks for joining Let It Be Known.
Thanks for having me, Stacy. It's always good to see you, even though you guys be forgetting about us on the West Coast, but that's okay.
We never
know
forget
you got
about
it in
you
the middle of
guys.
the day. We have to have an election in the evening time in order for you to think about us on the.
But you see how he comes in yelling at us. Greer and I, we take a lot of stuff, but this yelling from Sacramento that stole a baseball team from Oakland, I don't know that we can tolerate this.
We are not stealing a team.
You're not stealing the team?
No. She left her husband, and there's kids that need to be raised, and you might as well be with a good family.
I absolutely love that analogy. Larry, California stands at a critical juncture in this election as well. It's not a swing state, but what do you think is at stake for California immediately and in the long run, depending on who wins the presidency?
Well, okay, that's a good question. And of course, thank you, Stacy, for having me. Thank you. Let it be known it's always good. And Greer, thank you for, staying on making sure I got on here and all of my families with NNPA folks. So love you guys. But what's at stake? I mean, I think the immediacy that we look at is, let's be real. You've got a lifelong Californian, as president of the United States. So I think, the connections that, Vice President Harris has with, the existing California, those in leadership already in California, and even those on the ground. There's been a lot of conversation among our family about the uncertainty of Kamala Harris's background. And I know personally, I've known her for 15 years, and she has never once was she Asian. And as far as I can ever remember, I mean, I know obviously that is her cultural background and the like, but she's always leaned into her African American experience, African American leaders, faith-based community-based organizations, all the like here in California. So we have a lot of regard for her and her leadership should she ascend to president of the United States. So there's a lot of connections here for that.
Yeah, California, and of course, including, I should say, Sacramento, has some challenges with the unhoused population. How do you think this will play out as far as who is president? Can the vice president really help that situation in California? We know that in Los Angeles, it's been a big issue for the mayor there. She ran on that. We've been to Sacramento. We've been to San Francisco is absolutely, it's been taken over almost by the unhoused. How is that issue? How do you see her addressing that issue in California?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, the housing crisis is a housing crisis in California. There's no doubt about it. And there's many things as the reasons as to why, and that's too long for the show. But I think that, what I will say is that I think President Harris, let's just speak it into existence, President Harris would deal with it really, from a sense of compassion, I think, which is really one of the most important things. I know that there's a lot of pushback in regards to, how California has had to deal with the homelessness, and it is a crisis. But it's a national crisis that is really focused on the West. more than a quarter of the nation's, I mean, 2/3 of the nation's homeless are in the states of, Oregon, Washington, and California.
Right.
So it's a primary West Coast phenomenon that is really very challenging for many of us. It also has been because the increased cost of living in California has been very challenging. So you have people who might be a check away from being homeless or being unhoused, and so it's an ongoing thing. And of course, Vice President Harris has talked about having an opportunity agenda where she's focused on creating new homeowners. I think the other part of it that really has to be addressed is the ability to build in the state of California and the costs that are related to that. California, Sacramento in particular, has had a real challenge with keeping up with the demand of the growth of the city with the actual inventory of available housing. And so that's been really one of the biggest challenges for many of the cities in California. Is everybody's always talking about California leaving. No, people are not leaving California. People are coming to California still in droves. And so it's just a matter of really just trying to find the appropriate housing and affordable housing for those folks.
Yeah, just to go off topic just a little bit. Last guest we talked about, I mentioned the idea of President Biden or President Kamala Harris offering a pardon to Donald Trump. I see the RNG says he would give Trump a pardon only if he and his entire family leave the country and is never allowed to return. How would you see, you've known Vice President Harris a dozen years, you know things about her, the type of person she is. How do you think she'll handle that situation?
You mean as a pardon for
Donald Trump?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how she would deal with it. You asked me how I might deal.
What do you anticipate, though?
No, what would I anticipate? I mean, I would think, I think that, she's a very pragmatic person. So, I mean, I don't think she would, I think no matter what, I think she would recognize, first of all, that, if she were to win this election, to be honest, there's going to be tens of millions of people who are supporting Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris is more of a unifier than a divider. And so I would think that most likely she would lean into the space of, something that is pragmatic and something that is with compassion, as opposed to or somebody like Donald Trump might be, treat somebody else. I mean, it's just be real. I mean, and so, no matter who wins this election, they won't have a mandate. So they'll have to find ways, at least a smart president, someone who is presidential. Someone who is presidential would be behooving to them to treat, just treat those that didn't vote for them in a way of compassion. And Kamala Harris has said, whether you vote for me or not, I'm going to be, president for all of the country. Whereas the candidate on the other side has not necessarily said that.
Yeah, your former governor, Republican, Arnold Schwarzenegger, has come out and said he's supporting Vice President Harris. We're seeing a number of Republicans do the same thing or have done the same thing. How effective do you think this has been to have these Republicans come out in favor of the vice president?
I mean, I think it's really important. I think because they've done it in for what I've seen as kind of two different pots. One is Trump is not the person that we want, period. So we can't sign off on, the way in which, as particularly after January 6th, we can't sign off on that. The other is she's the kind of person that we do want. And so to me, those two pots really mean a lot to me. And I'm gonna do a shameless plug. The Observer is doing a live stream this evening.
We were going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll be late, but one of the people that we're going to have on this evening is Cassandra Pai, who was chief of staff in the Schwarzenegger administration. And she's an African-American woman, and she is, heading, I literally just hung up with her just a couple minutes ago. She's like got her Republicans for Harris, bumper sticker, and the whole nine. So I mean, I think Kamala Harris has struck a chord with people, whereas Donald Trump has he's been divisive, and I don't think that anybody in their, to be honest, anybody in their right mind can understand and support the type of rhetoric and potential foolishness that might come from someone like him in the White House again. We saw it once already. Like, come on, been there, done that. Like, nobody needs to have pain, again on purpose.
Yeah,
Well,
we've
there are
talked
some that think that way, but
we have talked in broad terms about California, but let's narrow it down to your city. I mean, the Observer's been covering Sacramento like a blanket for 62 years, like you said. What is the needs of Sacramento? And
uh-oh, did I freeze? Or did Stacy freeze? Okay.
Did we lose?
I lost you for a second.
Okay.
I don't know if it was me or you, but I couldn't hear anything.
Okay. So I wanted to narrow it down to Sacramento, the needs of Sacramento. And what do you anticipate from the vice president as far as when she becomes president? Because I'm going to keep it like you. I'm going to keep it positive. When she becomes president, what are the things you need her to do for the city of Sacramento?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the housing crisis is primary number one. Sacramento, we actually have two African Americans who are vying for the mayor's race tonight as well too. So the city will have its second African American mayor in its history, potentially first Black woman mayor in the city's history. And the top priority for both mayors is the housing crisis. So the reality is, we need resources. We need a federal assistance to really kind of address it in a way, because it really is like, it's almost like you're in a military type of situation that you almost need. It's like you need real reinforcements to come in to kind of really address, the crisis that it is. It also, to be honest, the challenge of fentanyl and the opioid crisis is really real here in California as well too. But from a sense of compassion. I mean, I tell people, you spend one night on the streets and see what you might turn to, because it's really, really challenging and it's very scary for a lot of people. So, I mean, I think trying to make sure that doesn't get any worse than what it is, and we can get that under control, is something that is of grave concern to the residents of Sacramento for sure. We start talking about the bigger things outside of kind of like the African American spectrum and sphere, stuff like obviously we're always dealing with the climate issue in California. And so having a real recognition of the realities of the climate crisis that we're facing here in California is also something that's very important.
Yeah, Larry, with the election potentially being undecided for days or even weeks, how are Californians preparing for this period of uncertainty?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we're pretty used to it. Californians, we've been doing the, vote by mail thing, and it takes a long time for the ballots to be counted. To be honest, even in our mayor's race in the primary earlier this year, it took about almost 4 weeks for us to figure out who the top two candidates were going to be. So there'll be some hand wringing, I'm sure, during those days, and hopefully not weeks, but at least days, to be determined. But I'll say this much: I mean, California is overwhelmingly, like you said, it's not in play because it is overwhelmingly in Kamala Harris's favor, and so I think the bulk of California wants to see her in the White House, in the main seat and not the vice president seat. And I hopefully hope the sun will come up no matter what happens. But hopefully folks can be calm, and I think Californians will be that way.
Yeah, and California has some unique concerns, among them emissions regulations, right?
Mhm.
When you think about federal policy under a Republican leadership, how could these conflicts shape California's approach to governance if Trump does indeed return to office?
To be honest, if he's in there, I mean, you know, he's not gonna stop anything that's I mean, those things are still, I mean, Californians are very mindful. I was talking to a Republican yesterday, and he was it blew me away. He was telling me, I mean, he's right. He's way, which way is right on the screen? This way, he's way over there. He's way over there. But and he was telling me about how he got a new car. I mean, it's literally his second. He has a hybrid, and this one's a fully electric vehicle. You know, people in California, you can even be right, but you can know and understand that, you know, we've got a real crisis in the climate crisis, and so you know, folks in California are very mindful of that, and so we're really trying to be, you know, the state of California. We're tree huggers. We do all the things that we
Yeah.
need to do to try, and it's the rest of the country that we got to worry about.
Well, see, I lived in California for 7 years, 7 hard years in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
given California's strong stance on progressive issues, what message do you think this election sends about the alignment or misalignment of
Right.
California's values with the broader national sentiment?
Yeah, we get a bad rap, I think, because we have historically always said, you know, really California is usually a few years ahead of the rest of the country in a lot of issues, and I think we still are. I mean, even the progressive lean that we have, you know, really is, we think, you know, a way of the future for us as a nation. I think that we recognize that, you know, the outer rims of the United States kind of are aligned with that. It's kind of that middle center that is, doesn't really kind of align with that. And there's millions of people that, you know, that want to have a voice related to that. And so I think, you know, we recognize that, but it is a little scary sometimes when you sit back and you hear folks, you know, talking about, you know, not caring about, you know, electric vehicles or you know, other things that we think are waves of the future, and ways to prolong a healthy planet for generations to come. So that's a little disappointing at times, but I mean, it's a lot of there's a lot of people out there that there's a lot of people out there that just feel otherwise. So
Well, a couple quick things before we let you go.
sure.
Larry Lee, the publisher, CEO of the Sacramento Observer. If Kamala Harris wins, several California leaders might join her administration. Is there anyone in particular that you'd hope to see in a Harris administration from California?
Oh, I haven't been asked that. I hadn't really given that much thought yet.
Maybe Larry
You
Lee will
know,
be in that administration.
no, sir. I think, you know, I think if I was to, and I don't know who this person would be, but to be honest, if there was someone or a voice or a presence that I would love to have in the Harris administration or somewhere in leadership, is someone who is mindful and sensitive to the California reparations movement. I think would be, you know, that would speak volumes, I think, you know, because California has been on the forefront of the reparations discussion. I think that, you know, we had some terrible stumbling blocks there at the end of the state session. But if there is anything that she could do that would be something that I would just absolutely love and applaud, is if she could find someone or some representation into her administration related to the reparations movement, because she said that it's something that she's paying attention to, and that she would, you know, love to be able to have that as a part of it. So,
Are you feeling optimistic? Are Californians feeling optimistic?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they are optimistic. Which scares the hell out of me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's. I mean, I mean, you know, I'm a newsman. I've seen, you know, seen lots of stuff, you know. But yes, Californians are very optimistic. My gosh, it's so hard. I'm in the city, and I travel in, mostly in the city. I've occasionally go into the sticks and to some places and spaces that I haven't. But to be honest, it's been nothing but Harris Walls signs, basically just
Yeah.
about everywhere. To see a Trump sign is an anomaly. Of course, they want to stand out, so they'll put it on the back of a pickup truck and the flags and do all the stuff that they like to do. But I think Californians are very optimistic because I think we know who she is. We know
Right.
that she could be a very great leader. I mean, she's got local experience, statewide experience, U.S. Senate experience, White House federal experience. I mean, come on, like, are you kidding me? And the dude over here, I mean, like, seriously, for real. She broke it, I'll fix it. What?
Yeah,
Whatever.
Larry, most folks will be up late tonight, so they can catch the Observers live stream tonight. Tell them how they can catch it.
So you can go onto our website, sacobserver.com. We'll have there's a badge there now where you can sign up for our live stream. We'll be very hyper focused on local. So we're looking again, like I mentioned, we've got, not only is there a African American. Oh, look at you guys! You guys are so well prepared. I love it. There's not only is there 2 Blacks vying for the seat for mayor for Sacramento. There's another Black woman in West Sacramento, which is actually where the oh, there they go. Look at that beautiful cover, man. Whose paper is that? That looks good.
I wonder who put that together.
No, huh? But Dante Early West is running for mayor of West Sacramento, which is actually where your former Oakland A's will be, actually in the city of West Sacramento.
Nice.
And so, which is right adjacent. So she's running for mayor. For that, she would be the first African American ever to ascend to that seat. And then there's some state propositions. We're trying to also make sure that we can get rid of the word slavery out of all California language, and of course, the right says that we're inflaming the decision. I don't know why having the word slavery is really an issue. Like, really, you're going to defend the word slavery? Like, come on, give me a break. Anyway, so we'll be talking about some state propositions as well, and the reparations movement as well too. So we're excited about the program that we'll have today, but it's a pale in comparison to
Here we go.
Let It Be Known. We aspire to be like Let It Be Known, and what you guys
here
do.
we
So,
go. You know what, Larry?
speak
It
truth
was
to power,
up until
brother.
that moment. It was so authentic until that moment.
It was from my heart.
From the heart.
From the heart. That's right.
Larry Lee, the publisher of the Sacramento Observer, we appreciate you so much. Thanks for joining Let It Be Known. And obviously, we'll talk soon.
All right. You guys be safe.
You do the same. So we know that Georgia is definitely a battleground state, and there are some pivotal regions in Georgia, like Fulton County, Cobb County, Gwinnett, Forsyth. And to talk about that, we got 2 special guests, none more special than, as Power 96 says, the Red Bone. Miss Dawn Montgomery, to the break of dawn. How you doing?
I'm okay. I hate that y'all didn't mention DeKalb County, because DeKalb County is in there too. So whoop, whoop, DeKalb County. Let me make sure everybody knows.
Well, DeKalb.
No, thank you.
So Dawn, first of all, what's happening right now? What's the mood out there? I know you hear everything.
So I went to. So I told Greer I wasn't going to be out there, but I ended up being out there because I was running errands. So from like Conyers to Conyers, Georgia, to about Alpharetta, Dunwoody, Sandy Springs, to Smyrna, East Cobb, back to DeKalb County. The lines are long now. Like people are getting out there. They're getting off of work early or whatever to try to get out there. A lot of school districts are out of school. That got our school district, DeKalb County Schools, is out. DeKalb Public Schools, I should say, is out. So that was a great thing. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that a lot of polling places are schools. So yeah, this is one of those things where you really actually know that, or you end up finding that out if you don't actually vote local or state in state elections or what have you. So yeah, that's been something that I've seen in conversation where people are like, why are the kids out of school? I mean, think about it. If you have people coming into coming into the polling place to, cast their ballots, right? And you've got these strangers coming in and out, you can't track that. You can't, there's no sign in. That's not something that you can monitor easily. So yes, kids need to be out of school. I'm sorry. I told my school administrator yesterday, I said, oh, my children weren't coming today. so there's that, but there's also one more thing that I want to bring up. I know that I found out via text message and on Twitter that there were some DJs that were teaming up across certain counties to kind of play some music for people as they're showing up at polling places. And as of right now in Cobb County, they have police force and all of that out there trying to crack down on that, because we know of SB 202. A lot of people have heard about that legislation that, the Republicans came up with to keep people from handing out food and water to people standing in long lines and waiting. So now all of a sudden, I guess music is going to be added to that. And as we can see, Amir is on, so I'll let him speak about Fulton County and the other areas.
Yeah. So Amir, thanks for joining us. The Atlanta Daily World. Amir, what are you seeing? You seem like you're out with a crowd behind you. How things looking?
I'm out. There's several watch parties tonight, so I want to hit a few of them up just to kind of get the pulse of the people. But I mean, this is, as Don stated, it's a lot of enthusiasm around the Metro Atlanta area. We see long lines and just people excited about what's expected tonight.
Yeah, the vice president's been there a number of times. How effective has that been, Dawn, Amir?
I mean, me personally, okay, I'm going to go first because I'm probably going to be on the other side of things. I'm going to say that it was great. It's great to see her here. It's great to have the Democrats really put some money into Georgia, because I think that was something else that the guy, I don't know if he's not over the DNC. I think he's over the other group. Jamie, what's his name?
Jamie Harrison, DNC.
Him. So he brought it up. He is over the He brought it up that they needed to pour more money into the swing states, and I thought that was something very intelligently done and very intentional. So that was a good thing on the Democratic Party sense. But my biggest gripe about them coming here to Georgia as many times as they kept coming to Atlanta. They kept coming to areas that were inside the perimeter and not outside the perimeter more. So they were not going to North Georgia to kind of challenge some of those areas like Blue Ridge, Georgia, or the Dahlonega, even challenging in Forsyth County, Cummings and all of that up 400. And then even going down south to Valdosta or some of those places. These are some of the toughest places to actually campaign. You have organizers who they work day in and day out to hit those areas. So to me, just swinging by one of those rallies to kind of take on them in those places would have been amazing. I want to say DeKalb County had at least 2 or 3 rallies, and I was one of those rallies didn't even need to be here. So I mean, I'm just saying, I will say the last one that they had here, it was in Clarkston, Georgia, and a lot of people aren't familiar with Clarkston, Georgia. It's probably one of the diverse cities in the country. Okay, the diverse, maybe the top diverse city that gets immigrants and refugees coming over from overseas would be somewhere up north, maybe somewhere past New York and something like that. But this town, this city over here, it has that, and I think it was a great thing for her to come here, and for people to see her and really now that made sense. That made all the sense to me, right? But I just, in my eyes, I was just I needed them to go somewhere else and, hog up traffic somewhere else,
So
earlier, I'm not lying. Every time you turn around,
you're right. I mean,
I
think people don't understand is that, Georgia is bigger than Atlanta. It's so many rural areas. You got Albany.
Thank you.
So Senator Warnock did do a great job of going to Savannah. He did several rallies in Savannah, which is his hometown. Bill Clinton actually did a fish fry, I think, in Fort Valley one weekend. So they did it a little bit, but Don is correct, is that they could have done a bit more outreach outside of the metro Atlanta area. But what I'm thinking is that they're really banking on a large turnout in the metro Atlanta area, because if you get a large turnout in the metro Atlanta area, it would supersede those rural populations that have dense populations in those rural areas. So you probably could outdo those numbers in the metro Atlanta area if a large there's a large number of people who show up on election day and early voting in the metro Atlanta area. So I think that's what they're kind of banking on, is that large turnout in the metro Atlanta area.
Yeah, and real quick, just a short segue, a little bit of breaking news. So Austin had presented earlier to us that there was someone at the Capitol that smelled like fuel. Well, the U.S. Capitol Police say that they arrested a man with a torch lighter and a flare gun who attempted to enter the U.S. Capitol Visitor Center today. According to Chief Thomas Manger, the man, identified only as a white male, entered the visitor center and looked around for a moment before being told by officers to put his coat and backpack through security. They said he stood there for a few seconds and then put his stuff on the conveyor belt. And as soon as it went through, they were able to see that he had a blowtorch ready to ignite something there at the Capitol. And we've been talking about this all day, how the city is locked down and businesses are boarded up, including the White House, with a huge facade in front of the White House, anticipating violence. This is some serious stuff here, Amir and Dawn.
It's scary, and I think that's why I'm extremely concerned about our journalists who are out and about. I'm concerned about organizers. I'm concerned about just any and everybody that's going to be out and about tonight and not really know what the person next to them might be planning in their head, either way that this could go. Like, it's just, that's why I'm at home. Like, I went on ahead and did everything I need to do today and was like, regardless to what happens, Dawn has done every errand that she could possibly think of for the next couple of days if she needs to stay in the house. Dawn has cooked. I even cooked last night. I cooked all the soul food last night so that we can have dinner tonight. Like, we're straight. Like, I am not going anywhere. I don't want to hear it. I'm probably barely going to watch TV, to be honest with you. I'm going to, just because I think the other thing about this, and I shared this with Greer, and maybe Amir can touch on this as well. I think a lot of us, especially in swing states, we're tired. We're extremely tired. And when it comes down to being tired and exhausted about, it's not that we don't want to be a part of the process. We don't want to be a part of democracy. It's not that. It's just that we just want to see what the result is going to be so that we can move on, right? And then it's also processing. Okay, a lot of us are still dealing with PTSD from the year 2000 when Bush stole the election, and then it's like 2020 when technically Trump stole the election. Like, it's just so much that we're dealing with, to where we are like literally like, okay, just give us the final results and let's go from there. And then we also know, especially here in the state of Georgia, with everything that has gone through litigation, a lot of people challenging voter rolls and things like that. Like, to be honest with you, I just don't think that we're going to have a definitive number for certain states. And I mean, I just want people to be prepared for that. And so to me, that's kind of why in my mind, it's literally like, okay, like, if you need to be in the house because this is going to be an ongoing thing and you have to watch it, have you handled all of the things that you need to handle? And for Dawn, I am done.
Amir, I want to go back because Dawn was talking about these counties that the vice president seemed to have ignored. How dangerous is that when the election is supposedly so close?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a gamble, right? Like I say, I think she's really banking on the metro Atlanta area, because if you look at Georgia and the way it's populated, it's like, most people are in the state are in metro Atlanta. And then you have like these dense populated rural areas outside of Georgia that heavily goes for Trump. Now, I think that what's going to be interesting about this particular election is not just that, we talk about, there was this big uproar about the black male vote, which I think was just some type of media play to get views. I think the biggest thing that we have to watch out now is what women will do. I think women will be the
white women,
the election. White women. I think women are going to decide the election. I think this is what it's going to come down to. So I would say we have to kind of look out for that. For those that ending number, with which way, how are women swayed in this election?
Yeah, and I to piggyback off of what he's saying, like I think that's the part for me is where in some of those rural areas where it might not have a whole lot of people, what have you, but everybody tends to vote the same way. If you don't really challenge where they're thinking or where they're at, especially when there's women and young children there, or like, I'm not going to say young children, I'm talking about younger voters, let me say that, that can actually cast ballots, that there are universities and stuff out there. So there was an opportunity to do something and to be kind of intentional about how they went about it. But to me, like I gotta co-sign with Amir here. Like it's gonna come down to the women, just because it's like, okay, what are the white women gonna do? Because again, as a DeKalb County voter, I'm frustrated with white women every time we get ready to go to the polls, because one thing, they'll have a sign in their yard, and I've heard the stories, and this is something that I want to give a shout out to one of my Twitter friends, Olivia. She's been on this huge campaign of like informing women that they don't have to tell the men in their family how they vote. And I think that that's such an important thing to kind of like note, because as long as I've been in DeKalb County, a lot of the white women that I have been friends with, or that I have sat at tables with, or I've had conversations with about politics or policies or anything like that, they always say that there's a discussion that's had at that same very table where the man will come and tell them what they're supposed to do, and they can challenge them and they can talk to them. But when it comes down to it, they're supposed to sell it like they're going to do the same thing. And as far as I'm concerned, white women, do what you got to do, because y'all can call. Look, y'all good for calling the police. Like, call the police. Like, if he, I'm just saying, take care of you, take care of business this time around. Y'all didn't do it the last time. We are putting this on y'all because I'm with Amir. All that energy should have been redirected from black men over there to them, and we should have talked that, like we should have just did something about that. Which I love that the campaign itself did have some commercials that showed for white women and white men that they don't have to tell their peers or the men in their families which way they want to vote. And I thought that was a beautiful thing to see. So I'm a little hopeful, I'm there, but I'm just like, I want to be comfortable tonight with whatever decision's gonna be made.
Amir, what do you think, or what do you see is driving Georgia voters?
Several things. I think abortion is a big issue. There are several, two women in particular who died because they didn't get health care in time because of that. And so I think with her visits here, VP Kamala Harris, she was able to kind of express what was happening, the real life impact of these laws that basically created with Trump and his administration, and him with the Supreme Court justices. And so I think abortion is going to be real big, and especially in the state of Georgia. And I think even like we talk about what happened in New York, that Madison Square Garden rally, which was filled with hate. It resonates. I think that's going to resonate nationwide in terms of just what this party really represents. I think for a long time, people kind of were sleeping at the wheel in terms of what Trump and his party really represents. And I thought that Madison Square Garden rally really made people pay attention to really understand, okay, this is what this party is really about.
Yeah. Wow. And we keep hearing that too, that was a pivotal moment, that Madison Square Garden rally there. Mike V says that
one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
One more thing, just one more thing to add to that. Another thing that you have to think about with them coming to Metro Atlanta and coming to Georgia as many times as they had. I see we got a visitor.
Listen, she's got something important to add.
She wants something to eat. Like, what do these kids do?
That's a voting issue.
It is. Gotta make sure because this grocery bill is high. Okay,
right.
So that's an issue. But I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed, Amir, with the last few times that they've come into Metro Atlanta, is the concentration of like being intentional on meeting with Black-owned businesses and things like that. So I want to actually like give a shout out to Ryan Wilson from the Gathering Spot and Dr. Lakeisha Hallman, who is over the Village Market. Both of these two Atlanta business owners and entrepreneurs have traveled across the country from state to state, city to city, like places like Milwaukee, Charlotte, and I want to say they went to Mississippi. I could be wrong. But just talking about, Black economics and all of those things. So you have to really like think about it. Like a lot of people feel like, the younger voters or Gen Z or the younger millennials aren't paying attention to politics, but these are some of the things that they want to do. These are some of the things that they need to know or is going to be taken care of, as well as like owning a home, like those type of things. So just wanted to add that in there as to what Georgians are looking for.
Well, I was going to mention Mike V. He says democracy drove him to the polls. He says all the other issues are secondary, and he wants to continue the process of building a more just and equitable society. With that, Amir, has democracy been among the discussions among Black people in general?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've seen our rights taken away just over the past few years with the Supreme Court justices taking away affirmative action, Roe v. Wade, and so we've seen our rights taken away. One of the things that people don't understand is like the trickle down effect of affirmative action, right? In terms of they're taking away affirmative action, and now you see the Fearless Fund and them being attacked from a right wing person Edward Bloom, who basically went after them because they were giving funding to Black women who own businesses. And so we're seeing like this pushback. And so, yeah, I think our rights are being taken away, but we have to understand that all of this is a trickle down effect of what occurred in 2016. The people who just didn't, a lot of apathy of people who just didn't show up to the voting polls. There are, thousands of people who just didn't show up. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that people have to show up. If people show up, VP Harris wins in a landslide.
Yeah. And so with that, before we let you guys go, Dawn, I'll go with you. What are you thinking is going to happen tonight? What's your gut feeling? The outcome?
My gut feeling says that we won't know. It'll be close. Ultimately, we won't know officially. I think it'll be one of those things where we might have to wait a couple of days before it's official. And the only reason why I say that is just because you have certain counties, Cobb County again, who has said that your absentee ballot, if it has not been turned into the election office by 7 p.m. today, your vote will not count, even though before you could get your ballot in. I just think, I'm very hopeful, and I want to know who is going to win tonight. But I am also on the back end. I'm at that point of like, okay, we're going to have to wait until it's certified. And if we have to wait, I just pray that it's not another 2000. Like I don't need it to be that type of situation where it comes down to the courts, like the federal courts, as well as like the Supreme Court. No, these states need to get it together, count these ballots, and let's go ahead and make that choice. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Amir, your gut?
Yeah. So before I tell you, say what I'm thinking about tonight, we're going to piggyback off of what Don said in terms of what happened in Cobb County today. There were 2 bomb threats. Well, there was actually 3 bomb threats, and they in those I think it was Cobb County, Gwinnett, and I think maybe Fayette. It was three separate bomb threats at polling places. They found out that what Secretary Raffensperger said, that those bomb threats came from Russia. So they were Russia influenced. And so what they're trying to do now is extend those polling hours from 7 p.m. to 7:20. So Don is correct that those numbers could come in late. My gut feeling is that I think it's going to be a landslide. For me, I look at it kind of similar to sports in terms of I look at, with sports is all about the ceiling, right? What's the highest ceiling? And I think Kamala Harris's ceiling is higher in terms of her being able to get newer voters, get people in terms of women, even Republicans. More Republicans are going to vote for VP Harris this time. And so for me, my gut feeling is saying that it's not going to be close. I think that she's going to be able to turn the tide because she's going to be able to expand her base better than what he can in terms of her outreach versus his outreach.
We
And
were
then
talking
he's
earlier.
going to
We were talking earlier to Nina Smith, who's a strategist, and she also used a sports analogy. She says it's important that the vice president runs up the score. So there you have it, Amir. Amir and Dawn, I tell you, there's no two better. And we're so glad to have you both. Thanks for joining us.
And we look good at it too, you know.
That you do. Y'all do.
Thanks, Stacy. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. We're going to go now to another swing state, Michigan. Joining us from the Michigan Chronicle is Jeremy Allen. Jeremy, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for popping in from a key battleground state. So there, Jeremy, women and minority voters are crucial, of course, there. How are Harris and Trump, how have they resonated with these key demographics? What are you hearing?
Well, I think what you see is both candidates have really honed in on Michigan, showing the importance of the state since announcing her, as the Democratic nominee for president. She's visited Michigan 15 times in the past 70 to 80 days, with the majority of that coming within the last month. And for her, it's been all about pushing folks to actually get out and vote.
Right.
Detroit and the surrounding areas have historically had low voter turnout, with the exception of a couple of the last elections dating back to Barack Obama, and with Hillary Clinton, there was a decent turnout above what was expected. But in this one, I feel like we're going to see astronomical turnout because of her ability to resonate with minorities and young folks. She's been on college campuses, the University of Michigan and Michigan State University within the past week, and we've seen tens of thousands of people turn out there to support her. And then particularly with minorities, she's been involved in barbershop talks, and she's been meeting with clergy members, Black church leaders here in the city of Detroit. And so she resonates highly in that area. We've also seen Trump try to play the clergy role, particularly with Black pastors here in Detroit. So he's had a couple sit-down meetings with Black clergy members. The difference, though, the stark difference in those meetings has been the majority of folks who attended Kamala's rallies at these Black churches have been Black Detroiters. Conversely, with Trump, there was a predominantly white suburban crowd in attendance at these Black church and Black clergy events that he's attended. So we're not seeing minorities, and we're not seeing women really resonate with Trump. And he's played up to his base. He was here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is on the west side of the state, yesterday, delivering kind of his closing arguments and his final, debate points and key points. But that's a primarily white audience. And, he actually took a visit last month to the home of the KKK here in Michigan, where that was started in Howell, Michigan, to kind of rally his base in that area, which has not gone away from its traditional upbringing as a predominantly white sundown town.
So do they have the attitude with all of that you said, the sundown town, the visit to the KKK home, do they have the attitude to punish him?
This was the same state where a few years ago, there was an attempt to kidnap our governor and hold her hostage. So I think looking at that, you can see that, that you have Detroit and small cities that are predominantly Black, like Flint and Pontiac, Benton Harbor, who are rallying in record numbers for Kamala Harris. And then you have the rest of the state, which is predominantly white. And for the majority of these cities, they're kind of split. You have your very clear red cities, you have your very clear blue cities, very few purple cities. And so just like what we saw in the 2020 election, where the outcome was determined by 30,000 votes statewide, I think you'll see it skewing a little bit more blue this time, just because of what Kamala Harris represents. with her presidency or her potential presidency versus what we know we're going to be getting from Donald Trump. But I do think that, Kamala Harris has made a case with Michigan voters as to why they should select her as our 47th president.
Yeah, and leading up to Election Day, and now we're at Election Day, we're hearing about the turnout. Have you seen the enthusiasm that everyone overall hoped for?
Absolutely, absolutely. Michigan is a state where we've increased and expanded our early voting period. And so people have the option not just to early vote through absentee voting, but in-person voting as well. And so what we've seen is a combination of early voting that's allowed for 3.2 million Michigan voters to cast early ballots. And people have been very excited to do that because, again, what we saw with President Obama was these 2-hour waits, at these voting precincts. And a lot of people are very, very excited to get in and get out. And I think a really huge driver of the enthusiasm at the polls are the local elections. Here in Michigan, we've got a Senate seat up for grabs, and we've also got 2 Supreme Court justice seats up for grabs, one of which is currently occupied by the incumbent, who is the first Black woman and the youngest woman ever to serve on Michigan's Supreme Court. So her story in and of itself has drummed up a lot of enthusiasm too.
Yeah, I got to ask you about Kwame Kilpatrick. He has come out, endorsed Donald Trump. Does he carry any weight there in Detroit or in Michigan in general?
Absolutely not at this point. I think Kwame was a success story unlike any others, right? He was this young, energetic.
I just remember seeing him on American Greed.
Man, listen, this guy reeked of swagger, though, and he represented everything that young Detroit men wanted to be. He was flashy. He had power. He had political influence. He had all these great things that he didn't utilize his power in the right way, right? And so I totally get where he's coming from in terms of being supportive of the person who gave him a new leash on life. But at the same time, there needs to be some balance in understanding the potential harms that this person presents for other people who are like you, your mother, your sister, your daughter, your women friends. And there has to be some balance in saying, I'm appreciative of what he did for me, but I don't have to endorse his beliefs or endorse him to become the highest ranking official in the free world.
Well, is that the only reason why he's endorsing Trump? Because that situation where basically Trump got him off the hook?
I think it is. And Kwame has popped up and been the keynote speaker at several Republican rallies in southeastern Michigan over the past couple of months. And he's touted this, I owe everything to Trump sort of agenda. And I think in doing so, he's blindly supporting anything that Donald Trump has said. And so he's not really looking at policy when he's coming out and doing this. From talks that I've had with folks around Kwame, it's all, he looked out for me when nobody else would, and I'm indebted to him for that.
He put himself in that situation, right?
He absolutely put himself in that situation by his abuse of power and not being accountable to the people who got him to where he was. And as a result of that, what a lot of people here in Detroit and across the region can see is that he's just being puppeted by the Republican Party as, this once charismatic young Black man who really garnered the attention and the empathy and the pat and love from people who look like him. And that's faded, and it's very evident in comment sections of social media when you scroll stories about Kwame Kilpatrick today.
Wow. Well, Greer's asking about Big Meech. He had been incarcerated for quite a bit, and now he's returning home. What are you hearing about him? And what about Hill Harper's race? So there's two things there.
Yeah. So Hill Harper's race, that was an interesting dynamic because Hill Harper felt like all he needed to do was mobilize voters in the city of Detroit, and that would help him carry Michigan, right? His race came down to a primary. In the primaries in Michigan, we historically have between 10 to 15% voter turnout. And so what he was hoping for is if he could get that number to bump up to maybe 20%, specifically here with the people who don't vote during the primaries in Detroit, that it would carry him through to the general election.
Right.
And it just didn't. So he focused probably 80 to 90% of his campaign efforts here in the city of Detroit for a statewide race. And he was just ineffective with connecting with voters across the state outside of the city of Detroit. But I'll say this too. I think a lot of people in the city of Detroit saw Hill Harper as an outsider who wasn't truly invested in the city. And he's lived here for the past 7 years, but it's only been the past year or so that he's been in all the pictures and at every event and making time to really connect with people on a level outside of, hey, I'm a Hollywood actor who now lives in Detroit. That's to say that's not to say that he was absent from the scene, but he just wasn't present with the people he was trying to connect to actually get to the polls. So that's the Hill Harper situation. We've seen and heard very little from him since August, and I think voters knew that might be the case if the election wasn't favorable for him. With regards to Big Meech, there's been a lot of excitement about his potential release. And I'll tell you why his situation is different than Kwame Kilpatrick's situation. What tends to happen with, people who aren't elected officials and just everyday guys from the block, we understand that if they get caught committing crimes, they're going to do their time. They're going to get caught. They're going to be apprehended. They're going to pay their debt to society by being removed from their families and their homes and their loved ones, and they're going to spend time in prison and in jail. We don't always see that, specifically with non-minorities and with elected officials, right? And so it was different for Kwame because so many people put their trust in Kwame to help alleviate them from situations that they were facing, from hardships that they were facing, and from issues that were happening in the city that stopped them from obtaining a level of wealth or affluency that they aspired to through putting him in office. So Kwame is kind of looked at as someone who betrayed the city of Detroit versus Meech, who was, this hood hero, essentially. Yeah. He came from nothing and he lived in the type of life, for better or for worse, that young people aspire to live in terms of, living fast and fancy cars and big houses and nice clothes and jewelry. But Meech served his time in federal prison and then was released to a halfway house until his parole begins, where he's officially able to return home in January. But, it was one of those things for the city where, some people were like, well, he's still a bad guy because he did bad things and landed him in prison. And then there were other folks who, were just very hopeful that, he's been accepting of a lifestyle change and will be the community leader and organizer that so many others have taken up upon their release from prison.
So let's get back to the issues there. Housing, inflation, they seem to be major issues everywhere. What are some of the major issues there in metropolitan Detroit? We know that the vice president is proposing incentives for home buyers, and Trump, of course, is advocating for tax cuts, but for wealthy people.
Right. I think what we see, and this has been a saying in the city of Detroit for a long time, if America catches the cold, Detroit catches the flu. And what that means is just all the problems that we see around the country, they're magnified in the city of Detroit because we rely so heavily upon, or historically, we've relied so heavily upon one industry to keep our city afloat. With the automotive industry, you have so many primary and ancillary jobs and streams of income that come out of us relying so heavily upon manufacturing and blue-collar automotive jobs. And so what we're really concerned about here in the city of Detroit is ensuring a financial future that expands beyond the blue-collar work industry, and one that's equitable and attainable for all levels of lifestyle, right? We want middle-class jobs to be available for folks that aren't just these $100,000 and up jobs that are reserved for, graduating students from California, Chicago, New York, who want to just try something new for a couple of years, right? We need these $50,000 to $80,000 jobs that are sustainable for people who currently live in Detroit neighborhoods. And so that's really what Detroiters are focused on right now. How can we move up the ladder economically and secure our future, not just through emerging industries, but also through education? Because that's been a huge focus for the state of Michigan in the past couple of years. The state just announced the first chief growth officer in the entire country, who's employed by the state of Michigan. And so as the job of the chief growth officer, her job is to build homegrown talent and retain that talent, as well as making sure that equity is seen throughout the kind of incentive packages that are being offered to companies to relocate to the city of Detroit.
Tell me something before we let you go, Jeremy. The role the Chronicle has played in the community during this election. Talk about that. What did you guys report?
We've been here. We've been on the ground. We've been boots on the ground. And our coverage of this election really started a year ago because we understood the importance of what was at stake for Detroit residents. Historically, we are an advocacy newspaper, a publication that takes what's happening around us and showcases it through the Black lens. Because, the city of Detroit is one of the best news towns in the entire country. And we have two preeminent newspapers in the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News who get global attention because of the quality of journalism that they have, as well as the network and their expansiveness, being a part of Gannett and the reach that has automatically. And so we understand that they're reporting for the mainstream consumer to read. We take the stance that they're going to do what they do and we do what we do. And what we do is take those exact same stories that are happening all around us and show how they have an impact on Black people and Black culture in the city of Detroit, where 80% of our residents are Black. So we're not necessarily reporting for the suburbs, we're reporting for the people right here. And what we've been able to do and what we've been tasked with is making these candidates, not just the national candidates, but the local candidates too, be responsible to answering the questions and listening to the voices of the Black constituents that they are asking for us to vote for in order for them to obtain power. So we've been holding matchbooks to feet. We've been exploring tough conversations. We've been informing them, which is our duty to a degree as well, of the problems that need solutions, and the hopefulness that we have that their candidacy and them being in office can provide solutions to systematic problems that have existed in our neighborhoods.
Jeremy, finally, when all the votes are counted, your gut feeling, on the Michigan vote, and of course, overall, what do you see? What's your gut telling you?
I think it will be a relatively close margin of victory for Kamala Harris in Michigan. I'm guessing about 4 to 5 points, which sounds, pretty big, but the way that the last couple elections have gone, I think what we'll see is some previously apathetic voters actually turning out in favor of what Kamala Harris represents to them. Nationally, I think we'll see a very close race as well. But I do think Kamala Harris will wind up winning and becoming the 47th president of the United States. I don't think we'll know that for certain with certainty by tonight, but give it a few days, and I think we'll have definitively declared her presidency and her being the next occupant of the White House.
Jeremy, the executive editor of the Michigan Chronicle, we appreciate you joining Let It Be Known. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to welcome back our buddy with the hat.
My man, Stacy.
You just ran out on me. I don't understand.
No, I'm sorry. I had a 4:15 Zoom that I had to.
He had something more important to do.
So I asked Greer for permission to excuse
Oh,
me, and she
it was
granted me.
granted.
It was granted. It was granted.
Nice.
But how you doing, man? And I always wear my hat because I'm not blessed to have hair like you, a head
Oh
full of hair.
gosh. Listen, so I'm looking at one of the comments from a someone who's identified himself as BVB09, who says, I voted to give the middle finger to Trump and Cruz. This individual said, I lost my daughter to COVID. She didn't have to die. Trump was at the wheel. This was his watch. I've been angry at him ever since.
Yeah, I mean, in some of President Obama's recent speeches during the last couple of weeks of the campaign, Stacy, and certainly during interviews, he's been very on point and honest to say that look, COVID would have impacted, would have been a major headache, a major problem for any president, either Republican or Democrat. But he said that what was the issue during the second year of his second term? Ebola, the Ebola crisis came about, and we had major cases here in the U.S. And what he did, working with governments around the globe, was to put together some type of a council, an emergency advisory council, so that they would have the tools in place to address a potential global pandemic. Because of his work, because of his taking advanced steps, Ebola could have had the potential to be as big, if not bigger, than the global pandemic. But because those controls were in place, what's one of the first things that Donald Trump did when he came into office in January of 2017, being Mr. Anti-Obama, everything, he disbanded that. And as a result, at the beginning of his fourth year in office, this global pandemic, and we lost over 1 million people. Now, Stacey, you remember the first couple of days of this crisis. You'd be looking at your news, MSNBC, and at the bottom of the screen would be the ticker. I remember when it was as low as maybe 75 cases. And then it gradually started ticking up. And someone within 2 weeks of the global pandemic came on, it was a scientist, and he said, we have the potential to lose 500,000 Americans. And I looked at the screen and said, no way in hell that's going to happen. There's no way. Stacey, as we all know, that man was right. And we lost just here in America 1 million, 1.1 million. I forgot what the number was globally. So there would have been some deaths, but a whole lot of people, including a whole lot of Trump supporters, died because the president did not take it seriously early on and was in denial.
Yeah, and there's other things he didn't take seriously, or certainly didn't handle them in a way that he should have. But we know that, as you said, over 1 million people in America died because of the pandemic. Then we find out that he was sending tests to Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir Putin. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I mean, Americans are waiting with bated breath for these tests. And he's sending these texts in secret to the number one adversary of the United States, Vladimir Putin. And even he had sense enough to tell Trump, don't let this get out. It's going to cause you serious political headaches.
Yeah. So we got Ebony McMorris joining us now from AURN Networks. She's over at Howard University. Ebony, hi.
I am. I was trying to get you guys a good spot. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, Ebony, how are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi,
so what's
how are
happening?
you? I was trying to get you guys a good spot, but you see right here, I am in the media space. Tons of media out here waiting.
Yep.
Waiting for the campaign party to begin. It's been a very long day, but it's good. It's good to see my people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to see you. So, Ebony, what are we anticipating over there at Howard tonight?
So I'm actually still waiting to see a rundown. I was just talking with one of the campaign people about kind of what to expect. We know that she'll probably hit the stage a little closer to 11 o'clock in this evening. But right now, they're also about, I'm going to move a little closer back. There are also about 2,000 people that are going to start gathering on this premises, on this illustrious Howard University campus. As I was coming into the press area, I saw the lines beginning to start and beginning to wrap around. And so I was told I have to leave and do another hit. And I was told that, I mean, even up until like 8, 9, the lines are still going to be very, very long. But let me just tell you something. I believe that when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We know that it is still very tight. But I believe that you are going to hear the same message that we've been hearing from Vice President Harris on, are you ready to turn the page, America? Period. Whether win, lose, I believe she's going to stay steady with that message. She spent a lot of time earlier today making calls to various radio stations. Her campaign has still been hitting the ground very hard. We know that before she comes out here, she's going to have dinner with her family. When I saw that, I was like, wow. And then we're going to see her later on. But this campaign really has been one more time. Two different sides of the coin. I know people like to say it's just the opposite, but you have one candidate who really has been talking about not just hope, but change, and not just change, but laying. Okay. So it's loud. It is loud out here. Can you guys still hear
Yes,
me?
we got you.
Okay. You can? Okay, great. So, but we have two different camps. One that has been talking about turning the page. The other one we've been hearing a lot of nasty vitriol comments, even up until yesterday on the campaign trail, right?
Yeah.
Even with his vice president talking about and being nasty, calling Vice President Harris garbage. Right? And so I think America shouldn't just take that as, well, it's just words. No, because those words become action. If he sees her as garbage, he sees you as garbage, he sees the community as garbage, his agenda for you will be garbage, and we haven't even seen any yet. And so this is a woman who has had about 107 days. 107 days on this campaign trail, who coming in, no one thought she would even get this far, but she has gone further than her predecessor. And we can look at her numbers in Iowa, we can look at what she's doing in Pennsylvania and other states. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in North Carolina, a state that they thought they had secure. So people can say what they want to say, but she, I believe, has really ushered in a new era of politics that we really haven't seen. Donald Trump has had years to put together a plan. And honestly, when he decides to come at black men and black people talking about he can relate to them, this is a man with 34 felony convictions, twice impeached. I would have, if I was a strategist, I would have come forth with some type of policy for those who were former felons. Why didn't you do that? If you want to do something, why give me a sneaker? Where's the plan? He has had no plan. He has concepts of a plan. And I'm not even trying to be biased, but this is the truth.
Wow.
So we'll see what happens.
Yep. Ebony, I know you got a lot of work to do, and then you got some other stuff that you always got to deal with as a prominent and great Black journalist. We appreciate you, Ebony.
Thank you so much. It's been good talking with you. Sorry about the music, but if you need
Don't worry about it.
call me back. We'll be out here, but I'll show you the campus.
Look at that. Howard University, historic HBCU. Wow.
Wow, that's the place to be. That's exciting. Are you gonna go over there at all, Stacy?
I'm not sure. It's just too. We got it covered.
Yeah.
How about that?
I got
You going over?
No. I've been receiving invites all day, and I said, nope, I'm going to stay at home, be on whenever you need me to be on. But I'll be right over there sitting on my couch, channel surfing.
Wait, Greer, you hear that? Austin's been receiving invites all day. All day.
No, to go over to Howard.
Yeah. Clean it up.
But the thought of being on my feet for an extended period of time, I'm not young like you and Greer. I'm like, no, I can do maybe a half hour.
I'll listen to this. Well, Austin, so we're asking everybody. I don't know if I asked you. It's been a long day, but your gut feeling on this outcome.
Stacy, I've had a calm over the past few days, the last 70 to certainly 96 hours, where I just feel somehow through the grace of God, she's going to do this. I feel in my core that somehow she's going to do it. Am I overly confident? No, but it's as Ebony just said, and I know you and Greer have said, and all of your guests throughout the day. We have watched Donald Trump literally self-destruct before our very eyes during the last 2 or 3 weeks of this campaign. I mean, he is in complete, absolute meltdown. And, I think, folks have said, and I have no doubt that, especially that first assassination attempt, really,
Alleged.
really alleged. Yeah, really scarred him. And in addition to him just being crazy, normal crazy, and in addition to, I think, the fear of not winning and facing serious jail time. And Ebony just said, he had 44 convictions. He's still facing another 54, 55 convictions that have been, that have not convictions, but what do you call it?
Counts. He's facing
count. Additional, 55 counts that have been put on hold because of the election. So I think he realized that if he is not successful at returning to the White House, despite however long he tried to delay the inevitable, I think he knows that he's facing serious jail time and certainly serious financial penalties.
Well, a jury found him to be responsible for sexual assault.
Yep.
Judge referred to him as a sexual predator.
Yep.
And he was found liable for massive business fraud to the tune of almost $500 million. So he is really facing a very, very bleak future if he does not win the White House.
But what always stuns me with even his supporters who are raising children, the behavior that he displays publicly, and if he's comfortable doing that kind of behavior publicly, he's doing it with comfort privately. That's not how we teach our children. If we saw our young children, being a bully and talking down to someone or ridiculing someone on the playground, we will pull them aside, put them in timeout, scold them, punish them if we need to. He basically called the former speaker of the House, the B word. He may as well have just said it. Everybody knew what he was talking about.
Right.
Calling for, you talked about this earlier, for former Congresswoman Cheney to be executed by a firing squad, shot in the face is how he put it. I don't consider myself a journalist, but certainly you are. Greer, the young Ebony who was just on, Barrington, Denise, he basically yesterday or Sunday joked when he talked about the bulletproof glass and how if an assassin wants to shoot at him again, it'll be okay if the way they're going to get to him is to shoot through the fake journalists. You know, he thinks you're a fake journalist. He thinks Denise Barnes is a fake journalist. He thinks Barrett is a fake journalist. He thinks Ebony. He thinks Dr. Chavis. That's how this man thinks. You know, everybody is expendable. Everybody to him. And yet this man may have the Republican nomination and may be the next, could very well be the next president of the United States. And I got a question for you, Stacy. Do you know of any convicted felons who can vote?
See, that's a great question.
I mean, why was he allowed to vote in the primary a couple of months ago in Florida? Why was he allowed to go to his polling place near Mar-a-Lago today and vote? How is this?
Florida does not restrict convicted felons from voting.
If you and I would,
it was in another state that he was convicted.
They would not have allowed us to vote.
Of course not, Austin. You don't have the complexion for the protection.
Yeah.
Who says that? Is it Mike V is always saying that?
Mike V.
Yeah. And David Youngblood says that he is bullish on Madam President Kamala Harris.
That's right. Claim it. Claim it.
That's what you do a lot, Austin. Austin claims these things.
Claim it. You know, I think I cannot wait for 8:15, 8:30 to see what the results are in Georgia.
Yeah.
I was talking to Ambassador Young earlier. You know, he said he feels good.
Wait a second. So Greer is saying that the Washington Post is about to do an update. Can we trust them?
I would take what they say with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I don't know what type of update they want to give at this point. It's 5:45 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. So yeah, they're not going to declare anything, but they're going to be updating. But again, the question is, and you answered the question: can you trust them?
Yeah. I mean, look, I still think the Post is certainly a credible publication, but it really left a bad taste in my mouth, the non-endorsement. And you know what also left a bad taste in my mouth, non-endorsement? George W. Bush. I'm just what a
his daughter
Barbara came out. Yeah. And some folks have said, I'm sure there's a great degree of truth to that, that she would not have gone public if she did not have the support of her parents. But her parents were not the president. She was not the president, a former president of the United States. She is not a former first lady. And I think in these unique times, this unique, unprecedented election for the next president, he had a duty to come forward.
Well, as Mike V's asking, has anyone heard from Barrington? Barrington is missed. The polls close in Florida at 7:00. They close in Georgia at 7, and North Carolina at 7:30, and Michigan at 8 p.m. And so some early returns should be coming in not too long after that, Austin.
That's right. Hey, have you heard anything from whatever happened to Mark Robinson?
The disaster of a lieutenant governor?
Yeah, I mean, what are the polls saying about him? Because he's been shunned by Trump and everybody since August, mid-August.
Yeah, that race, to call it a race at this point would be a disgrace. There's no way this guy can win.
Yeah. No, I have to go online and see what the polls are saying, but he was quite prominent in July and early August, and then just self-imploded.
Well, he imploded as we see Trump doing. But the big question remains: will Trump pay the same type of price?
No.
Well, I mean, you said you're hopeful.
He never does.
Mm.
He never has, and I don't anticipate him actually doing any jail time. They'll reach some sort of an arrangement. He'll agree not to run for public office again. But unfortunately, I don't see Donald Trump serving any jail time, even if he is convicted.
Yeah. So the final predictions I'm seeing from, who is this? Zogby has Democrats taking the House, Republicans with a big chance of flipping the Senate, but Harris with an approximate 4% percentage victory.
Wow.
Yeah. So the exit polls are starting to be prepared. So we're going to see what's happening here. So early, 35% of voters said democracy mattered most to their votes. This is early exit poll information. 35% said democracy mattered most, while 31% said the economy, 14% said abortion, 11% immigration, while just 4% named foreign policy. And these are very early exit poll numbers. And it's also reporting that men and women both said that the state of democracy was their most important issue, followed by the economy. 2 in 10 women said abortion was most important, compared to 8% of men. So those numbers, again, it's early, but it's telling that democracy is the biggest issue.
Yeah. And, I mean, really, based on, the comments that President Trump has been consistently been saying since he left office, January 6th is still on everyone's, mind. He does not believe in democracy. So why anybody would be, surprised? I mean, look, he's been very clear about what he intends to do. Stacey, if he goes after he said he wants to shut down MSNBC and CBS, who's also a target? NMPA and the Black Press USA.
Black Press is certainly a target.
Yeah. I mean, just because he has not said it doesn't mean, but we will be right at the top of the list, the Black Press.
Here's something else, Austin. What do you think this means? And it's, again, really early exit polls. It is showing that the number of voters, of course, I mean, we're getting a lot of potential records as far as voting numbers are concerned. But from the income standpoint, the largest voting block right now is those earning $50,000 to $100,000. Now, the wealthy, those making more than $250,000, right now they're showing just 6.1% of those have cast ballots, as opposed to 33% of those earning between $50,000 and $100,000, and those 31% between those earning $100,000 and $150,000, and 14% of those earning between $0 and $50,000. What does that tell you a little bit, if anything?
I mean, certainly the middle class is certainly concerned. The upper class, those making incomes of $250,000, $300,000 and above, for many of them, their number one concern. And I can, sort of understand their appeal to Trump. They want to pay, less in taxes. So they're looking for significant tax breaks. The middle class is looking for tax breaks, but those who are below $50,000, they should also be playing a significant role in this election. And I, for the life of me, do not understand why so many are not.
Yeah. And so we also heard the Trump camp talk about cheating in Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia authorities said that there is no issues with the election there.
Yep. And 4 hours ago, when Trump was had just cast his vote in near Mar-a-Lago, he specifically said that the election thus far has been fair. Now that will change once he starts seeing numbers coming in that are not favorable. But he is indeed on record as of a couple of hours ago. Now, yesterday, and certainly in the days leading up to today's election, one consistent theme of Trump has been the election is rigged, the election is unfair. So even he can't keep his facts straight, non-fact straight in his fictional mind.
Power 96. This is a MSN exit poll that we are citing here.
Okay.
So he's asking. Just wanted him to know. So Mike V says Rick Scott in Florida is the big fish that Dems have to flip. Austin,
wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be great? I mean, if we could flip Florida, even if we can't, I mean, hopefully we could carry the state, but if we could, knock him off, if we can knock off Ted Cruz, I'm just not confident that we can carry, Dems can carry Texas. But if we can somehow knock off Ted Cruz, that would be a great victory.
Yeah, and according to John Zogby's strategies, Harris leads Trump among independents, plus 13. She's up plus 12 with women overall. She's up plus 19 with senior citizens, those older than 65. She's up in suburban voters, plus 6. Large city voters, she's up plus 20.
These numbers are national, Stacy?
These are national, yes. Young women, Zogby has her up 35, plus 35.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Trump, on the other hand, Zogby has him leading the vice president among first-time voters, a plus 8. He's up plus 2 on under 30, plus 6 with men. Small city voters, he's up plus 4. The rural vote, he's up plus 19, plus 5 with Hispanics, which is, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, I mean, why it's so difficult for so many people to see that he does not have your best interests at heart. I truly don't don't understand. When I was in Pennsylvania canvassing last weekend, I knocked on someone's door. He or she wasn't there, so I left the pamphlet on the door and came down the steps, and a white lady pulled up and she screamed at the top of her lungs, I hate Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So I went up to her car. She rolled the window down, and we, believe it or not, we had a what's this here?
Yeah, Alan Lichtman is reaffirming his election prediction.
Wow, great. But we ended up having a to the degree it was a civil conversation. She believes that all politicians are crooked. I say, who can be more crooked than than Donald Trump? And I told her there's no comparison in the vice president's record. It has never been proven that Joe Biden was a part of any criminal family. And she said, well, his son was convicted. I said, yeah, by the Biden Justice Department, the very same Justice Department that has convicted Donald Trump, and will hopefully hold him accountable moving forward. So You see it all. You see it all.
Yeah, well, that Justice Department, let's just to be clear, they haven't convicted Trump. They haven't gotten a conviction. It's the state of New York that's got a conviction
Point taken. Point
against
taken.
Donald Trump.
Yep.
Milwaukee will be recounting every absentee ballot that has been recorded so far, over 30,000, according to a report that just came out. This took place after election officials discovered an issue with a voting tabulator. And so they said, out of an abundance of caution, all 13 of the machines involved are being reset. Of course, Milwaukee is one of the slowest reporting areas in the state.
That's fair.
So
look,
here we are.
I mean, I think it's important to do whatever we need to do, just as we did in 2020, just as we did in 2016. I think it's important for the American public to feel that elections are indeed, fair, and that their votes were indeed counted, whether they were on the side of whether your candidate won or not. The challenge with dealing someone anti-democratic like Trump is no matter what. Look, she can. What was it? Nixon beat Muskie. Senator Muskie in 1972, I think 48 out of 50. Senator Muskie carried Maine and one other state. In 1984, Ronald Reagan beat Mondale, 49 out of 50. Mondale barely carried Minnesota. I don't anticipate that kind of I would be quite pleased if Kamala did, the vice president did something sweeping like that. But even if she did, even if she does, Trump will still say the election was rigged.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a recount when no recount is needed or warranted.
Well, a lot of Hispanics, according to Orangey, especially in Texas, think that they're white. He says they will claim to be Spaniard. He says it is sad, but oh well, they will be the first ones deported if Trump wins. And speaking of Texas, very shortly, we are anticipating Representative Ron Reynolds out of Texas. So we will be talking with him about what's going on there, Austin.
Exciting. I mean, look, Texas is it's in play. It's in play. Let's see what happens. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Well, we hear that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just if the vice president could carry the state, that would be amazing. It would be equally amazing if Congressman Allred defeats Senator Ted Cruz.
Yeah, that's been a close race throughout. And we remember, was it 4 years ago, Beto O'Rourke, everyone thought he had a real chance, but it really wasn't that close.
Nope. He was soundly defeated. And I just don't. Have you seen any polls, Stacy or Greer, on where Nikki Haley's supporters are leaning with the election? I mean, look, he gave her. I just don't understand how people are so willing to be ridiculed by what does Barrington call him, the orange man or the orange clown, whatever. Now, she dropped out of the race in March or April. He ridiculed her when she dropped out of the race. He allowed her to speak at the convention, and I guess they were in Minneapolis in early July. And he just sat there kind of glaring at her, nodding, almost enjoying her public bow down to his candidacy. But, she had a fairly decent dent in the, in those voting in the Republican Party. And I just don't understand why he made no real effort, no concerted effort to reach out and expand his base by appealing to her voters. And the only reason I can give on his reason for why not, he didn't care.
Yeah,
he didn't care about them in the primary. He doesn't care about them now. I mean, think about it. Not once during the campaign have they appeared together.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Austin, it's what a night. The night is really just beginning.
It's a good beginning. Yeah.
It's going to be a lot. We saw Ebony out at Howard, and that looks like it's just all out chaos. I don't see how you do a broadcast from there.
I know. Like I thought about it, I'm like, no, I'm good being quite comfortable here. I went to the Jamaican place and got some oxtail and peas and rice and cabbage and a ginger beer, a couple of ginger beers. I'm going to sit here and just watch the returns and pray.
I don't know. Representative Ron Reynolds, do you have some ginger beer and some oxtails out there in Texas? He's looking like, what are you talking about? Come on, Representative Reynolds, wake up. How you doing?
Hey, I'm here. I'm ready. Hey, look. Hey, I'm all in, baby. I'm ready.
Hey, Brother Reynolds, how are you, sir?
I'm fired up, baby. I'm fired up. Today,
well, is Texas fired up?
It's the Super Bowl for elections. This is do or die, baby.
Do or die.
Texas.
And you know what? For some people, it's probably literally.
We're looking forward to it. We are voting right now. We have left, and we're ready to go, man.
So, Representative Reynolds, as objective as you can be, what are you seeing in Texas?
Well, I'm going to be very straight up with you. You know, I want to keep my credibility. I'm seeing a lot of energy for Kamala. I'm seeing a base of people that are really looking forward to our first Black woman president. I'm seeing people excited about the opportunity to vote for Colin Allred for the United States Senate to defeat Ted Cruz. I just don't believe that there's going to be enough support in the election.
Say again.
I think Colin Allred will come up just a little bit short. Colin Allred will win.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I hope my internet is stable. I said that I think that Colin Allred will do well, but I think he's going to come up a little bit short. I think Colin Allred will come up a little bit short today. I don't think he's going to get us over the hump.
Wow. And what about the presidential race in Texas? How is that shaping up? Is there a chance that Texas can actually go blue?
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna log off and log on because I think it's
okay. We'll get them back. The representatives having some issues, obviously.
Yeah.
Mike V says you're eating like a king, Austin.
Thank you, Brother Mike. I wish you were closer, man. I would give you some. Not.
Well, I was going to say, we close to you. You're not offering us anything.
I kind of walked over there, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Oxtails.
No, but you know, yeah, I just think, you know, from what I know of Texas, it's going to take at least another cycle before we can turn, you know, Texas at least into a purple state. I feel like with each election, you know, we're getting a bit closer. Tell me this, and I was talking on the phone with someone earlier. If, you know, indeed the congressman loses, did he give up his seat to run for Senate, or will he return to the House?
It's a really good question.
In fact, I guess I mean, he can't run for both.
No, you can't run for both.
Okay, so he will be, if he's not successful in returning as a senator, he will step down. He will be out of Congress. Okay.
So, Representative Reynolds, is that the case here with you're talking about Colin Allred? Did he give up his seat to run?
He did. He gave up his seat as a congressman, a safe seat that he had actually flipped from red to blue in the Dallas area. And he really had done a great job as a young congressman and had a great potential in the United States House of Representatives, but had bigger plans to run for the United States Senate, which he knew was a big gamble. We saw there was some optimism of how well Beto O'Rourke did against Ted Cruz the last time, and he felt like he could get over the hump. What I was trying to say, I hope I conveyed it. It was a little choppy. What I was trying to say earlier was, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for Colin Allred. He's raised a bunch of money. I mean, a lot of money. In fact, the United States Senate could hinge on Texas or Florida or Nebraska in terms of whether or not the Democrats keep control of the United States Senate. So a lot of national money came into Texas late. You can't turn a TV on without seeing a Colin Allred commercial or an anti-Colin Allred commercial. But I don't think there was enough emphasis on the ground game to get those low propensity voters, particularly African-American voters, to the polls in order for him to be able to overcome the deficit that he's going to have in the rural areas around the state. Urban areas, suburban areas, he'll do well. Fort Bend, I mean, the big cities, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. But it's those rural areas that are going to where he's going to underperform. He needs to have a hell of a turnout in the big cities with the black and brown vote and white women that are voting for reproductive rights. So I think Colin will make a good showing. But I'm always keeping it real with your viewers. I think he's going to come up a little short. I hope I'm wrong. I love to be wrong on this one, but I just don't think he's going to have enough to get over the hump. And unfortunately, that may mean that the Republicans take back over the United States Senate. I don't know if it'll be a Mitch McConnell, but another Republican will be the Senate Majority Leader. I do believe we'll take the House and have our first African American in Hakeem Jeffries, and I'm excited about that. But I don't believe that the United States Senate will stay in the Democratic hands.
Wow. That's hey, that's an honest outlook, right?
Yeah. Take me ask a question, Representative Reynolds, sir. So assuming the congressman is not successful in his run, will his seat remain blue?
Absolutely. One of my former colleagues, Representative Julie Johnson, is the Democratic nominee for his seat, and it looks very much like she's going to win that seat. Colin being on the ticket certainly helps. I think that she'll secure against the Republican and to stay Democrat. So I don't think we're going to lose any ground from his seat, and I think we'll maintain the House. I mean, we'll get the House. But I just think that he's going to be just like Beto. When Beto gave up his seat to run for the United States Senate, his seat stayed Democrat with Veronica Escobar. I do believe that my colleague, Julie Johnson, will win that seat.
Okay. Wow. And again, I asked you this, we got choppy, like I said. Are Texans, are they feeling the vice president enough to turn that up, to turn that blue, at least for the presidential race?
You know, I don't believe so. And I'm speaking very candidly. The women, the Divine Nine, man, they're fired up. We had a big rally with Beyonce. I was there. There were over 30 people, her largest crowd. Until maybe some recent one that she broke in DC. So yes, people are excited. I think people are also excited to see Beyonce, right? But the point I'm making is, I think that there is excitement, but I was around when Barack Obama, and it was fever pitch. I saw a lot of younger people that were more excited, that went to the polls in bigger numbers. I saw larger lines. I don't see the kind of Obama-esque movement, be the hope and change. I don't see that with her on the ground. And I think that that's going to not propel her to even come close to winning the state. I think that she'll be decent. I don't think she's going to get embarrassed by Trump. But I don't believe that she'll come within 5, maybe 4 or 5 points, which is pretty substantial. And it's sad because, for your viewers and your listeners, more African Americans in Texas than any other state. I just haven't seen the enthusiasm among Black men. Black men,
why is that?
They've come around. I don't know. They've come around from when we started, right? I mean, she's been the nominee for a short period of time, right? When she got it from when Mike stepped down. I've seen black men come around more, but she still had more ground to cover with black men, and black men still will be the second highest behind black women. So I'm not knocking it. I'm just being very candid with you. She would need 90+% of black men. I don't see her getting that. I see her getting that with black women. I don't see her getting that with any other demographic. I think black men are hovering the 80+% range for her, but she would need to have run the table. And I just think that some of it could be gender, but because her policies are good. I mean, don't give me that nonsense. I hate when people say, "Oh, she was locking brothers up. She was a prosecutor." That's nonsense. She was a district attorney. What did you expect her to do when people were accused of committing crime? She followed the law. She didn't target, single out black men as a prosecutor. In fact, from everyone told me, she was very fair, and did everything she could with diversions and other programs that district attorneys can use to be able to be help people in the community. So I think that's just an excuse. I think there's been a knock on her that's false narratives. I mean, for all practical purposes, she's been a great vice president. I mean, I think it's just nonsense. I mean, but I do think that she will do well. I just don't think she's going to come close to winning Texas. I do think she's going to win the Electoral College. I believe she's going to prevail with 270 electoral votes. I believe that she's going to do pretty well in most of those swing states. I think Georgia could be a very big surprise because of the African American turnout. North Carolina could be a surprise because of the African American turnout. The African American turnout is keeping her in contention in both states. Michigan, certainly the African American turnout in Michigan is certainly going to be pivotal to her winning, and that the blue wall. Pennsylvania, it is imperative for her to win, and I think the African American turnout is going to help her there. So all in all, I think the African American turnout will be above what it was for Hillary and Biden, but not enough for what it was with Obama for her to win at that same level. And it's a shame because I can't imagine 4 years of Trump in Project 2025, 4 years of Trump and voter suppression, and more anti-DI, more nonsense against critical race theory, more disparities within our criminal justice system, more MAGA Supreme Court justices. I mean, I could go on and on. I can't imagine 4 years of Trump when black folks, they would be voting against their own interests, man. I mean, that would be terrible. So I hope people will vote their values and not, because of some stupid sneakers or some other nonsense that I hear the hip hop community talking about. He's cool or he's hip. I mean, he's a bigot. He's a racist. That's what Trump is.
Well, the first polls have closed in Eastern and at 6 p.m. Eastern in Indiana and Kentucky. And just now, a judge in Georgia's Fulton County Superior Court has approved extended hours for 5 polling locations there in Georgia. So it's going to be a long night. Be a very long night. Representative Ron Reynolds, thanks so much for jumping on. We always appreciate you. And we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, man. And I listen. Let me say this. I want to thank the Black press. I want to thank NBA for being that voice that we often is missing, that mainstream media doesn't cover. I want to thank you and Greer and Dr. Ben Chavis for speaking truth to power without fear or favor. And I really am very disappointed at the Democratic Party, particularly for not giving enough to Black media and Black press. Shame on the Black media establishment for sure. I just want to thank you for with your peers and with your platform these issues. So I definitely want to give you guys a shout. I appreciate what you do continuously, week in and week out, to educate people, and that mainstream media tends to not cover. So I appreciate you and the platform that you provide particularly for the African American community.
Thanks so much, Representative Ron Reynolds. Mike V makes a great suggestion. He says, hope that Harrison Walsh wins so they can expand broadband connectivity. Yeah. Thanks again, Austin. Man, it's a long night. So we're going to call you about midnight, wake you up from your...
I will get on, brother. I will get on. It's going to be a long night. Seriously, call me when you need me.
We will head over to Roland Martin shortly, and we will also be looking at Win TV, the Let's Talk segment with Denise Rolock Barnes and the Washington Informer. Also, Larry Lee, don't forget what he's doing in Sacramento. Go to the Sacramento Observer's website to register for his live stream tonight. And of course, the 2-minute warning, Bobby Henry's West Side Gazette. Continue to tune in, everybody, and we will bring you the results as they happen. Thanks for watching. Let it be known.